dos, hold on. Turn to live stream. Uno, dos, tres, go.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's good, y'all? It's Chris Gary, it's Andrew Benjamin, it's CJ Charles Jewett, and Jack Wannan of Knockdown News. And this is a very special edition of the We Are Rizin podcast, your source for all things about the Rizin Fighting Federation and Japanese mixed martial arts, or when times just get a little lax, we tend to shoot the shit. You can follow us respectively on Twitter. I'm at ChrisGary92. Andrew is on Twitter at abenja1. CJ is on Twitter at CJ_Sokokaku. And Jack is on Twitter at Jack Wannan or Knockdown News, right? Right?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, right. But still, enough about all the intros. We're here to talk about the Rizin Fighting Federation 30 card that took place recently at the Saitama Super Arena back on September 19th, 2021. If you watched it on Rizin Live, or if you're trying to watch it on live now, please do so within the next 2 weeks, because you don't want to watch a drained out card. Or if you're watching it on live now, you don't want to be left out. You don't want to get shut out. But other than that, we had 10 fights on the card. Only two fights ended in anything other than a decision, unfortunately. But let's go ahead and get right down to business and talk about the Rizin Bantamweight Grand Prix, the 61 kilogram bonanza that saw 4 people advance on to New Year's Eve, and the other 4 just wait for a spot to be on another card. Let me go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and get the results down real quick. Kai Asakura defeated Alan Yoshihiro Hiroyamaniha. Naoki Inoue defeated Kentaro Masakiri, aka Yuto Hokumura. Hiromasa Ogikubo defeated Takafumi Otsuka. All 3 of those fights ended in unanimous decision, by the way. The only outlier of that was Kenta Takizawa knocking out Yuki Motoya in 2:27 of round 1. Now, when it comes down to these 4 fights, which one did y'all think was the more exciting of the 4? And that includes caring about the decisions, unfortunately, because I'll tell you this right now. When I was on a Twitter Spaces chat this past Sunday during this show, right in between the co-main event and the main event, which was Naoki Inoue versus Kentaro, and obviously Asakura versus Hiro, I fell asleep in the middle of the fights. Like somebody woke me up at the beginning of the main event that I was so. I think it was J Wolf that woke me up during the middle of the main event that I was so fucking shocked. Like 13 people came by in my Spaces chat during the main event wondering what I was doing. All I was snore. I was basically just dumbfounded as to what the hell was going on. But still, how excited were y'all for this Grand Prix, and which fight did y'all think excited the fans the most?
Charles, let's start with you because you were there in person. So
yes,
you can go ahead.
Based off my time there, I went there with a couple of friends. So the Naoki Inoue fight and Kentaro fight, at least from the live perspective, got the crowd most into it. People were very excited about that fight. In the first 2 rounds, it looked like Naoki was kind of pulling away with it. And in the last round, Kentaro kind of tried to finish it. And there's a lot of people from his hometown in the arena, a lot of people from Osaka, and they were all screaming and kind of going crazy when he was just ignoring the leg kicks and going forward. And I think that not only was the most exciting fight of the Bantamweight tournament so far in this event, I think it was the best fight of the event.
Jack, your thoughts?
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is that heading into this tournament, out of even all the 8 fighters that were left in the tournament at this point, I think Kenta Takizawa was the person that everybody hated the most. This guy was sort of infamous because he won his first round fight, but he sort of didn't. And we can talk about moral victories again if you want, but he certainly came into this round as the person that people didn't really like that much. And I think for a lot of people, he might have redeemed himself because not only is he the ultimate underdog heading into the Final Four, pulling off an absolute upset with victory over Yuki Motoya, but he scored a finish. And on a card where there wasn't many finishes, he really stuck out in this lineup. I think he certainly, besides the three winners who were sort of expected to be the winners, he definitely stuck out as a huge headline at this event.
Yeah,
I will say there was a lady sitting next to me who was kind of verbal, and she yelled at the beginning of the fight, "He's running again." So I think the Jack's thing, he did create a lot of like negative feelings from his last fight, but he probably redeemed those with his knockout. So,
and you know, kind of crazy to me because it's like I said, obviously prior to this fight even happening, Kenta Takizawa should be more focused on fighting than dancing. He should stick to dancing after the fight rather than before it, because he was basically talking a whole lot of nothing on the Rizin confession, saying, "Everybody, watch out for my Takizawa dance," or something like that. I mean, maybe the fact that he was running again was the fact that he just didn't want to face Yuki Motoya head up until right there where he knocked him out. But still, I think that Kenta Takizawa was starting to be a little bit more cocky, you know, because with the fact that he's now in the Rizin Bantamweight Grand Prix semis and he's going to be fighting on a big platform on New Year's Eve, his ego was going to be stroked a little harder, so to speak.
I have to give a shake my finger at Yuki Motoya because he absolutely did not read my preview when I said he should not try to stand with Takizawa, and that's what happens when you stand with Takizawa. Also, can we also point out that I think this is the first time, I can't recall if there's ever been a fight. Has there ever been a fight that was declared TKO because a fighter exited the ring? Has that ever happened?
I don't think that's why it was declared.
I don't think it was, yeah.
I think it was because as soon as he stepped his leg out of the ring, that's when the referee.
But you could see on replay he was sort of waving his arm too to say, you know, I'm out of this.
I know. I thought he was waving his arm to say that no, don't stop.
I think the ref realized he was hurt pretty bad and stopped the fight because of that.
He wasn't even protecting himself.
I don't think he helped himself by getting out of the ring.
Right.
That might have made the ref stop it quicker, but I mean, I think it was just ruled a TKO. I mean, because people.
Oh no, it was the TKO was him exit. I thought was him exiting out of the ring because
I don't think so.
He was. That's how I thought it was. That's how I thought it was.
I don't think
is exiting a ring is.
I think they'd be like a red card or something. I think they would card somebody before they immediately TKO'd them.
I think what made things a little confusing was that the English broadcast said that that's why the fight finished when it happened.
Yeah.
They did say that. Yeah, they did. They did say that.
Speaking of which, in order to address the rope issues, they actually had new ropes for this event. And they didn't want to have because the last event, didn't 2 or 3 people kind of fall out of the ring.
Yeah.
So they had much tighter ropes. They had thinner, tighter ropes for this event. And I thought it worked quite well. I didn't notice any problems with the ropes at all. And it was actually easier to see.
I mean, to think of it, didn't they have like as many men at ringside with those little paddles and shit, trying to keep the fighters from getting out of the ring than they were at the last shows?
I didn't notice that. I know they always have like referees following around, and pretty much as soon as grappling got near the ropes at this event, the ref would stop it and change the angle of the fighters to keep them away from the ropes. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was something that was very consciously like, we need to keep people from falling out of the ring.
So let's talk about Takizawa. Yeah, I think you made a good point, Jack, that he has redeemed himself. Like did a total 180. A total 180 with this fight versus the Imanari fight. Actually, and just like his rising career in general, because it's been kind of wishy-washy. This is like his real first impressive win. I
will say I think that what's weird is that, you know, he might have redeemed himself for some people, but when I think about it, I think people are Takizawa fans now? No, I think that there's definitely a fair amount of people that are probably going to watch the next fight to see, okay, let's see him lose against a real elite fighter. It seemed like in the video package they were trying to make him out to be some sort of awkward guy with his TikToks and things like that. So I don't know, maybe I think he redeemed himself to people who thought he would be a really boring fighter or a scaredy fighter that would run away. But
And
I
that's the
don't know.
funny
I
thing.
don't know if he made fans per se.
That's the funny thing is that Yuki Motoya's problem is the more versatile grappler than Imanari. I would figure that if there's anybody that should use Motoya should have been smart to have used his grappling against a guy like Takizawa, and I think that's the way he could have won. But I don't know why as we saw in the Rio Okada fight, Motoya was basically trying to be a striker, and he struck with the wrong guy this time.
Yes, that's my general feeling too. Is I don't know how much this fight tells me about Takizawa. My general impression was more that Motoya fought stupidly.
No, I agree. No, I absolutely agree. Yeah,
because I kind of agree with you. I think Motoya is probably the more versatile, or at least the more established fighter at this point, who has the more versatile skill set. And the fact that he decided to fight that way, I mean, either he didn't respect Takizawa's striking at all, or something very strange happened. I don't know what happened. So, but it was more like, oh, Motoya fought like an idiot, more than I was really impressed with Takizawa.
Well, we still have to give Takizawa credit.
I agree, but
he's a long striker that can just really get you from anywhere. It's the same thing with kind of like John Jones. John Jones is able to strike you from virtually anywhere, and he knows how to use that his length, his reach. Sorry, go ahead, Charles.
I would almost put this like in the same category as the other finish on the card, where it's like the guy that fought Shoji, just Suzuki, fought like an absolute like maniac and paid the price for it. And I'm like, Motoya didn't fight Takizawa like the way he should have fought him. Just like when you're fighting Shoji, you shouldn't blindly try to knock him out with haymakers in the first 20 seconds.
Though it's funny you say that, because one of the other fights with Hamazaki and Fujino, you made a prediction that if Hamazaki fights a specific way, that could be her undoing. And it turned out kind of the opposite happened. So this was like it seems like fighters were just, this was not the time to try new things. Is essentially,
I'm a big believer in use what got you to the dance.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
And I think some fighters have been trying to kind of branch outside of that, which in a tournament or a big fight like this, I don't think you should. That's more of like a thing you should do in sparring. You should try to do something different.
If you also now just going back to that whole thing with use what you got to dance, or I should say not using, with the Inoue Kintaro fight.
Right.
I think we weren't during the press conference that Inoue had a broken hand or something.
He had a broke. I think his right hand. I don't know if it was broken, but his right hand was injured going into the fight, which to me just kind of shows the things that happen in these tournaments. Because I mean, Kai Asakura, I think, broke his hand in the first round of the fight with Yamaniha. Inoue was going into the fight with an injured hand, and I think Ogikubo might have had an injured hand in the first fight of the tournament. So we're starting to see injuries pile up for those in the tournament.
Now I can understand that, but when it comes down to the rest of the Bantamweight Grand Prix, though, out of the 3 fights that ended in a decision, obviously not including the Takizawa fight where he just danced around Yuki Motoya until right at that moment where he knocked him out. But out of the 3 fights that ended in a decision, which fight did y'all think excited the crowd more? I mean, I know I'm sounding like a damn broken record, but still. Would y'all say that
I still think
probably excited for?
I would say that the Naoki fight, most people, I mean, in live, people were screaming for Kintaro and were very excited when he tried to make his comeback. I think the Kai Asakura fight kind of had this like letdown feeling where they thought that Kai was going to knock him out. And then when it became clear that he wasn't going to knock him out, it was more of like a nervousness. Like, I think the people I watched it with, who were more casual fans, kind of thought that Kai was fighting strangely. They thought that he was giving Yamaniha the chance to win when he was like fighting overly aggressive and was taking risks that he didn't need to take.
Yeah, what is actually talk about that? So I mean, I think we all picked Kai to win that, and probably it should.
Well, the thing was, I picked Kai to win, but I was saying I wouldn't be surprised if Yamaniha pulled off the upset, and he almost did.
He almost did.
if it wasn't for the fact that he got manhandled most of the fight.
No,
What I
well,
thought was interesting about this going into this fight was that against Kuramoto, Yamaniha showed that he can take a really hard punch. So I was kind of interested to see what would happen if Kai couldn't finish him, which is what we got. And what we noticed is when Kai can't finish someone, I don't know if it's the pressure of being the main event and trying to feel like you have and the redemption of his brother losing to someone on the same team, but it felt like he was really trying to force it. And it kind of makes you interested to see what happens to Kai in the future if he can't knock his opponent out. He seems to get frustrated, take unnecessary risk coming forward, hunting for the knockout.
I'll say this: I've never seen a more disappointed face on somebody who won a fight. He looked like if he had lost a fight, he probably would have been happier. When he sat, as soon as he sat down in that chair, he looked so miserable.
That's what I didn't understand that either. Like on Twitter, it seemed like people thought that Yamaniha won the fight or something. It seemed like people were saying it was a close fight. And my impression watching it live was not that the fight was close. I mean, I thought Kai Asakura dominated the entire fight. It was just that he didn't finish Yamaniha.
I think here's from the way I watched. I thought like maybe I could see them have given it to Yamaniha, but I could have also seen him giving it to Kai. It wasn't. It was. I did from watching on television and just hearing it. I don't know. It's a different perspective when you're there watching on television here. I thought that it's like, oh, I could see that going in the direction of Yam.
If that was just like a case of people having too high of expectations, it's like one of those things where like if Kai isn't knocking him out, he's losing. Where I think it was just a case of Yamaniha did better than people thought he was going to do. Yeah. But that doesn't mean he won the fight. Like he still landed punches because, in my impression, Kai was being overly aggressive. But he was landing punches and strikes. But it doesn't change the fact that he was like being stunned almost every round and pushed up into the ropes and kind of lit up on. And I don't think did he only get one takedown, and then Kai pretty much got up after he took him down. Yeah. So I thought it was pretty clearly Kai's fight. The first couple of minutes, Kai looked really angry. He was like throwing really aggressive, angry body punches. Yeah. And I think he was really trying to force it. I think there's a lot of pressure on him because, I mean, if you look at, he and his brother are the most popular fighters in Rising. So I feel like he just felt the need that he had to finish the fight. And when that didn't happen and he hurt his hand, it kind of made it a strange fight.
And when you say hurt his hand, do you mean that he broke it, or was it just like, I don't know, did he specifically?
I think he broke his hand in the first round.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. No, I think that Kai did win. I rewatched the fights on YouTube, which you can see all the fights actually now on the Rizin YouTube channel. So, but yeah, I thought Kai clearly won, but I don't think, it's weird because it wasn't the domination that I think that probably a lot of people thought, and probably even Kai of all people was like, this guy, the weakest member of Banzai, I couldn't finish. Because that was like the whole thing leading up to the fight. He's like, oh, he's the shittiest member of Banzai. This is going to be an easy fight for him. And probably Rizin brass thought as well, but it wasn't. So it was kind of like, if you look at, Kai has almost finished almost everybody. He finished Kyoji Horiguchi, but he can't finish this the B player from Banzai. So
I think you're selling Yamani hit short. I think you're.
Oh no, but I'm saying that's what Kai sees. That's what Kai sees or saw him as, or that he was he's the weakest member of Banzai. So this is an easy fight for him.
I thought it was actually a kind of a tougher fight because Yamaniha, that Team Banzai thing is kind of like when Vitor Belfort was like saying he was Team Gracie. It's like, well, Vitor Belfort's not going to try to submit you, and Yamaniha's not going to try to submit you. Yamaniha's a brawler. He's going to try to knock you out and takes a lot of punches. And I think we showed that if you're a tough guy that takes punches well, you can frustrate Kai.
Oh yeah, well, I mean that's the other thing is I think we also saw in the Manel Cape fight, the first one, is that it seems like the longer the fight goes, the more that Kai gets a little bit frustrated. Mm-hmm. And that it's like it's a need to finish in the first round for him. It's a need. If it doesn't, then it's just I don't think a lot of Kai fights have gone beyond the first round off the top of my head. I think they mostly get finished in the first round.
Now, after the performances, I know it's not going to happen anytime soon, but I kind of thought it'd be fun to see Kai fight Kentaro, just because Kentaro has such like an aggressive, just throw down and go forward style that I'd like to see Kai fight more brawlers.
That's also that was an interesting fight as well, because
Are you fight?
Sorry, Chris, you're breaking up.
I mean, sure you want to see because that.
Chris, just fix. I don't know.
Yes,
It's
sir.
very hard to hear you.
Your screen's frozen and your voice is very. Oh, there we go. There we go.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. Actually, speaking of Kintaro and Naoki Inoue, and you mentioned it before, Charles. Why do you think that Kintaro was not realizing, okay, this guy keeps kicking my leg. I should do something about that.
I think Naoki has kind of this I think people are like, he has like this Mike Tyson, not, this is obviously hyperbole, but he has like this Mike Tyson-esque aura of he's the guy that's supposed to win the tournament. He's like this young monster that's kind of emerged. And he's also a very good grappler. And I don't think Kintaro wanted to grapple with him at all. So I think Kintaro was worried that if he rushed forward, he would get taken down. Plus, I think he eventually decided, oh, he's just throwing single leg kicks. I'm going to try to start countering those. And those counters worked well in the third round. I think if he would have started doing it earlier in the second round, it could have been a different fight.
Yeah, Jack, I want to ask you.
DLC. Are you sure you want to see Kintaro versus Kaya Sakura in the finals or even in the semifinals? Because that fight will end up being a knockdown, drag-out brawl for 3 rounds.
Well,
So I don't even think it's going to end the decision.
Sorry to correct you, but unfortunately, Kintaro won't be because Kintaro lost. Maybe they could do that fight down the line.
Yeah, I'm saying hopefully down in the future.
But
Good.
Jack, were you surprised that Naoki Inoue virtually did no grappling? I don't think it even went down to the ground once, if I recall correctly.
It didn't, no.
I mean, I don't know. I think that in retrospect, it all makes much more sense when you realize he had a hand injury. You know, maybe you wouldn't want to grapple more if you have a hand injury. Maybe you just prefer to do a striking performance, which by all accounts was working for him. I mean, he was. I think when they went to the scorecards, I think everybody had a general idea that Inoue was going to pull off the victory. So I mean, the game plan was working for him. I don't see why he would try changing it.
It's so funny. It's like the best. It's like the best grapplers on this card. Inoue, Motoya, Hamazaki all like came into a room together, and they're like, "Okay, everybody, we're not going to grapple in our fights." Agree? It's literally like it's like.
I will say the difference being though that Naoki Inoue is a much like high level. He's a very high level striker as compared to the other people you mentioned in that conversation.
Oh yes, his striking is actually like after post UFC has gotten so much better.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, it was just I just didn't think that like, oh, he's gonna try to strike with a guy like Kintaro who can.
And
Go ahead,
sorry, if I can add one thing, just to go back to the Kaya Sakura fight, this is so weird to me, but at no point until like an entire day later that I saw someone bring this up, but for like an entire 24 hours, at no point was I like, oh, Kaya Sakura didn't win that fight, or like, oh, they might not give it to him. Like for some reason, I think it was an interesting fight in the sense that Kai had a really hot start and then sort of, it became much closer later on. And I think that made it a much more interesting fight than if it was the first round over and over. But once we were heading to scorecards, I was like, yeah, he won the fight. Like there was no doubt in my mind.
Oh yeah, but also you can't, whenever they say, don't leave the judge's hands, really, that's like literal, like you just never know, like what can happen. I mean, for God's sakes, we had a judge just this past weekend who thought that Yoel Romero somehow won that fight against Phil Davis. So you just never know when it comes to like what
blame
judges
California, Andrew. Blame California.
Oh, I mean, for the most part, most fights in Rizin have been like judge okay. But listen, that's the thing, you never know, and that's why they always say don't leave in the judge's hands. Just to make sure we don't forget the other fight we haven't really talked about, Hiromasu Okubo and Takafumi Otsuka. Charles, what was this fight like? Because I think they both said that oh, we're both wrestlers, so we're gonna like beat the shit out of each other. They didn't say it like that, but they're kind of like implied that in their I think pre-fight press conference that's what they're planning to do.
I think this fight kind of has like the misfortune of being the least interest in the tournament, at least from a Japanese perspective. And I mean, I thought it was actually a pretty interesting fight because I thought Otsuka had his moments. I don't think it was a one-sided fight at all. But that being said, I think it was the fight that generated the least amount of interest on the event. Not the event, but the tournament for myself and the people at the event.
I
This is
definitely,
kind of people went up to go to the bathroom and things like that.
yeah, that's also, it's also just the history of the fighters. I think like almost all their fights, all their wins have been by decision. So I guess a lot of people kind of figured, well, nothing's going to happen in this fight. It's probably going to go to decision. That's what I thought as well. Is that's probably going to go to decision.
I was also putting together like a ranking of the view counts for the fights. I think this might be the least viewed fight of the event on YouTube.
Let me guess. Kai is number one, probably, right?
Yes, that is true.
I figured.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, what do you think about this fight? Kind of go the way that you thought?
I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, it went the way I thought. I mean, I both these guys are real tough, so I had an idea that it was going to go the distance. I honestly don't have much to write home about this fight. I don't think it was too spectacular, but at the same time, like they can't all be winners. And I think the issue is that when you have certain fights where it's two tough guys, but it's also very clear who's going to win, you're not going to get an interesting result because it's not going to be a finish because they're both tough. But it's just going to be one guy outperforming the other one because the skill difference is so great between them.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah. I guess so. They have to make 4 fights. I guess what I thought probably the obvious thing to do is Kai Takizawa and Inoue Ogikubo. What do you think, Charles? Is that probably what they're going to go with? You think?
I mean, that's what I would put together. But I mean, do they want to market like Kai Ogikubo 2 or something like that for the? I mean, do they want to risk putting Kai in there with someone that can potentially knock him out, or do they want to put him against someone he's already beat? So it's kind of the question between that. I think the Takizawa fight would be more marketable because they've never fought before, but I think it also has more of a risk for him. So maybe they put him against Ogikubo.
So you think Takizawa actually would have you think that's more of a risk for Kai than obviously the Ogikubo one because we know how the first fight went, so you kind of could figure that one. I'm assuming they're not going to want to do in a way Kai for the semifinals because if you want, that's the riskiest out of all of them.
I always maintain that whenever you fight a guy that knocks people out, there's always a risk. And just as Takizawa showed against Montoya, he can knock anybody out.
Even though it's kind of my thing, and I'm unfortunately having the task of looking at the one untrusted source, that being Wikipedia. I mean, what if a fight between Ogikubo versus Takizawa were to happen as opposed to Kai versus Inoue in the semifinals?
I just don't think that would happen. I think that's like the least likely matchup they're going to make because they want to have as big of a finals as possible.
I think personally that they're going to give Kai Takizawa in the semifinals because realistically, if he's facing Inoue or if he's facing Ogikubo in the semifinals, they're going to have a real tiring fight. And I think that they probably want Kai to go into the finals with somewhat amount of, I mean, they want him to go into the finals, first of all. And I think that of those 3 opponents, that's Takizawa's the one which he has the best chance of beating, in my opinion. So, and I think that they want Kai on Fuji TV. I don't think they want to start the Fuji TV broadcast with, well, a few hours ago, Kai lost this fight, and you're not going to see him later today. But you can see the highlights for him losing here.
It'll be better for folks watching on live now than it will be for the folks on Fuji TV.
I'm curious to actually know, Jack, how did you watch it? Did you watch it through Live Now, or did you watch it through Japanese commentary?
I watched it through Live Now.
Okay, gotcha. Because Charles, right after during the intermission, they did not show it on Live Now. Or they didn't show the.
Announced like a trillion things.
Yeah, Yutaka Saito came out. Souza came out. They announced
King Kazu.
They announced the pro wrestler versus K1 one fighter.
Suzuki, Team Banzai member Suzuki.
It was pro wrestler versus shoot boxer, not K1 fighter.
He's not. I think he was shoot boxing. Now he's one champion. Then was one championship. But he's the guy that's been teaching striking at Team Banzai.
So they continue the new member of Bonsai during the
Yes,
intermission.
exactly.
Good.
Exactly.
Good.
Wait a minute. I kind of slept on this. Who did Roberto Satoshi? Who did Roberto Satoshi Sosa say was the new member of Bonsai Jiu-Jitsu wanting to get into Rizin?
I don't know. I just know that this guy from shootboxing, Suzuki, he's like ripped. He works out with Sakine Strike all the time. Is the striking coach at Team Bonsai. He's the one that like taught Koike that elbow that messed up Mikuda's face.
Oh,
and he's joining Rising now to fight a pro wrestler. They had a pretty funny face-off. Did you see the announcement that like a famous soccer player, King Kazu, his son, is going to fight for Rising?
Yeah,
the soccer player's son?
King Kazu's giant son is supposed to be facing off against somebody, I think on New Year's Eve, right?
That's what they said. They said they didn't make it. It wasn't 100% sure. They said they wanted to do it for New Year's Eve. And my friend lives in Osaka, and the fact that King Kazu's son was fighting Rising made front news of a newspaper.
So I'm curious. So is his son famous? Is his son soccer player, or is King Kazu?
King Kazu is a soccer player who I've been told is the oldest professional soccer player in the world. He's like 54 years old. And he's famous because one of the reasons he's famous is apparently a bunch of his kids also become successful athletes. So he's like this stud, so to speak. And so people are excited to see what this son does.
Is this and I could be completely off base with this, but would you say this is similar to like when Shinju came into Rizin and a lot of her marketing was around how her mother is a comedian and is extremely famous?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
but, I mean, the only difference being he's athletically inclined.
Right.
In a way, if you want to give it a more American perspective, it will kind of be, in a way, like LeVar Ball giving birth to these three NBA players.
Yeah.
D'Angelo, LaMelo, and Lonzo.
So
only it is,
egos
aren't being stroked here.
So hopefully King Kazu's son, hopefully when he gets his fight, hopefully it ends in a soccer kick, because if not, I'll be very disappointed.
No.
Did you guys see the Ishiwatani retirement ceremony?
Oh, Lord. And by the way, King Kazu's son, his name is Ryota. But yeah, I think we also seen a little bit of Shintaro Ishiwatari's retirement ceremony. I couldn't make out what he was saying because obviously it was in Japanese, but Charles, you were there. What was it that Shintaro Ishiwatari said during most of the ceremony?
I wasn't really paying that much attention, to be honest. Because as soon as he came out, I was like thinking about our last podcast where I was like, they're totally doing the 10 count. That's all I could think. Like you guys were like, they're not doing the 10 count, and all I could think was they're totally doing the 10 count.
I was so sad because it was like it's like a death. It's like it just felt like it's the depression. I liked it overall. They brought the flowers out for him. They had Takada-san in the ring as well. I thought that was really cool. And then they ended with the depressing 10 bells. It leads you on to cry. It just the idea that because I remember the 10 bells from the Owen Hart Raw where when he died, Eddie Guerrero, same thing. Whenever I hear the 10 bells, I just associate it with the death of somebody. So that's why to me it's like it maybe is more depressing than maybe when other people hear it. But
Andrew, you can say that, a 10 bell salute equals death or something like that, which is true. But in a way of the person still being alive and, getting to hear that final intro one last time, it was a way of like it was a send-off, so to speak. A send-off to show, hey, this man ain't going to be fighting anymore. Let's give him the proper respect that, let's say the UFC won't give somebody like Joseph Benavidez or Anderson Silva or Carlos.
So I think, he said he's going to still stick with the sport. He's just obviously not going to compete in MMA. So probably, I don't know, coach for Cave.
I think he's just going to start training. He's probably going to train. And I think his wife has her own restaurant, so she'll do that. And he's probably just going to start coaching and training.
That's it. She has a shabu restaurant, right?
No, it's like a sake bar in Tokyo, and they change what they do like periodically. So like they had
Andrew,
a seasonal ramen menu, and then they switched over to something else. I think they switched over to a different option right now. I don't know what it is, but it's cool. She changes her menu like every couple months.
Sorry, Jack. What was that?
I think you're getting her mixed up with a fighter who owns a shabu shabu restaurant.
Tencho owns a
Yeah.
shabu shabu.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I want to point out, I think it was Kapoza who pointed out that that it's interesting that Rizin, or I guess JMMA in general, had no problem showing the matches that he lost, as opposed to other promotions where they don't ever mention the losses whenever they're like building up a fight or for, I guess, whatever. But that losses are a part of the sport, and that
one of the best rising VTRs was that one where it was just about all the fighters that had lost that were coming back for redemption.
Yes,
I think it was like Horiguchi's coach had just died and Rena had just lost, and they were just kind of showing them all like crying about they had just lost and how this was like redemption.
Yeah. Don't even get started on the amount of times they put over the tension loss to Mayweather.
Well, that's different. That's different because
they pay a lot of money for that loss. They should be able to air it as many times as they want.
Because Charles, you don't get the I don't know if they show it on the screens there during intermission, but for the intermissions for us, they always show like highlights from fights, from previous fights. And one of the ones that they would always repeat over the Rizin theme is Floyd Mayweather intention. For some reason, that was the one they would always show. Like they would never like change it up. They would change up the other
TV thing. Because everyone in the arena is like rushing to a bathroom.
So a lot of American viewers or international viewers have just this guttural reaction every time intermissions come on, because we're like, oh god, it's gonna be just a. And Jack, you could probably attest to that as well. Like,
yeah, well, the intermissions are great because as you're trying to stay awake, you just hear the Rizin theme over and over, and you hear and you see sometimes the moments that you remember to, like when you first saw it, you're like, no, because they show all the finishes, even the ones that you don't want to remember.
But it would always just be the Floyd one that would always they just always show that one for everyone. They would change, you'd see different ones for different shows, but Floyd tension was always there for some. I don't know why. They just would always show that one, and it's a bad memory. It's a real bad memory, and it doesn't help because when I hear the Rizin theme song, kind of like I have Vietnam flashbacks to that finish. I'm curious to know, Charles, was anybody in the audience crying?
Sorry? Before.
Oh, during the retirement ceremony. Was there like any, I don't know, tears or from the female fans?
I feel like I'm such a bad representative of this retirement ceremony because I was honestly trying to think if I could sneak off to the bathroom before the next fight. I didn't notice anyone crying. I'm sure there were people crying, but
I mean, come to think of it, CJ, you probably didn't pay much attention because they probably weren't throwing all their belongings in the ring at Shintaro Ishiwatari. Nobody was throwing their panties or anything into the ring for him.
I mean, I like Ishiwatari, but I've never been like out of my way to be a big fan of his. I mean, I like his fights, but he's just not one of the fighters that generates a lot of interest for me. So
is it also
if someone I was a big fan of, I would have been like, what are they saying? But for Ishiwatari, I wasn't really that interested.
I think it's also interesting to point out that, I mean, obviously the majority of his career was not in Rizin. It was in Shuto, Pancrase,
right?
Yeah. Like he only had about 5-6 fights, I believe, total in Rizin. So it's very interesting that they gave him a retirement. So I think that's just interesting that, like, even though his tenure wasn't long there, and like his tenure with Sakakibara, versus someone like Prokop, who I think should have gotten a retirement thing, just because how long he's worked with Sakakibara and throughout his career. It was just. Did you find that interesting at all? That like, why is Shintaro like? Do you think when Kyoji? Oh, I think when Kyoji retires, he'll probably definitely get a retirement ceremony, right? But like,
I think Ishiwatari's created a lot of public interest over his past couple fights, and Japanese people like him a lot. And especially like the more recent Rising Confessions where he and his wife were on it. And they kind of had like, there's one where his wife was talking to Okikubo's wife at her restaurant. So I think they've created a lot of interest. And I think because his last fight was in Rising, that also helps. I mean, it wasn't Crow Cop's like last fight in Bellator against like Roy Nelson in New York or something. Like,
Yeah, it was in the
not hanging around
tri-state area.
Japan that often.
It's understandable, but still, though, if let's just say if we were to create a physical JMMA Hall of Fame, and obviously we would gather the legends, you know, the Yamamoto's, the Minoru Suzuki's, the Miracle Cops of the world, but you know, we would have. I mean, would we even consider Shintaro Ishiwatari with his legendary career as worthy of being a JMMA Hall of Famer, even though he did win the Bantamweight King of Pancrase title and was the 2017 Rizin Bantamweight Grand Prix runner-up? Would you say that Shintaro Ishiwatari's career is worthy enough of being a JMMA Hall of Famer?
What do you think, Charles?
Well, I think he's popular just because he put on exciting fights, and he brawled and he'd knock people out or get knocked out himself. But I mean, when I think of great Japanese mixed martial artists, he doesn't really come to the top of my list. He's not one that pops in my mind immediately. So, I mean, I think he was like a better than average fighter. And he was definitely like a top level fighter. But I mean, I would never say that he's like a Hall of Fame level fighter.
What about you, Jack?
I mean, depends how many people were putting into this Hall of Fame. Are we
That's
letting
true.
Jose
That's
Canseco in?
true.
Hell
like-
no. We're not letting that steroid cheat in.
Wow.
I mean,
Especially-
we would much rather let King Mo in than Jose Canseco. Let's just say that.
But I mean, if we're inducting, you know, like 3-4 people every year, sure, why not? You know, throw him in there. I mean, he's clearly an influential person. Anyone who's had the amount of fights he's had is going to have, you know, some level of influence on the scene. So I'm sure, why not?
I'll go back. I was thinking more of like a Mount Rushmore, I guess.
Oh yeah.
The Hall of Fame definitely has more people. I'd have no problem with him being involved.
Oh, definitely not Mount Rushmore. I don't think that's a hot take. He's definitely not Mount Rushmore worthy. But I think certainly Hall of Fame.
Would you say that he's more shrine worthy than Mount Rushmore worthy?
Yes.
Not to mention, also, he had one of the most, I definitely would say one of the better crossover promotional fights when he fought Kawuno, the Pancreas Shuto fight. Considering how, you know, most, especially because he went up, I think, about 2 weight classes, maybe 1 for that against Kawuno. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, when I say better crossfight, just because, you know, you never really got to see like champions of different organizations just take on each other at that time before Rizin came along. So I definitely, I watched the fight. And it was a great fight, and he dominated Kawuno when in all the aspects of the game where he shouldn't have, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So definitely Hall of Fame worthy. JMMA, Rizin, Hall of Fame worthy. Certainly not Mount Rushmore worthy. That's a discussion for another day about who's like the Mount Rushmore JMMA. Because I think depending on who the fuck you talk to, you're gonna have people who say 4 different people versus, and then someone else will say 4. Yeah, that's a long ass conversation.
Yeah, of course it's going to be a long ass conversation because these dude pros who are Zufa zombies will only sit there and say, "Oh, but this guy wasn't in the UFC and all that BS." At least we're talking about it and not them.
Oh yes. But we're gonna continue on with this show.
The rest of the fight, shall we?
So the next fight that happened, we mentioned a little bit before, was Ayaka Hamazaki talking about grapplers doing striking, defeating Emi Fujino by unanimous decision. As you can see, Emi Fujino's right eye got completely swollen, left eye, got completely swollen shut and was absolutely gross. Charles, I want to ask, so, you know, you thought that if she was going to strike with Emi, that could be her downfall. Were you just watching this fight and like, how is this happening? How is Emi Fujino being outstruck by Ayaka Hamazaki?
Not really, because after the fight, if you follow them on social media, Emi Fujino went and had like a $3,500 knee injection done after the fight. And if you look during the fight, it looked like she like fell down randomly at one point, and it looked like she was having some problems. And you saw that Ayaka was targeting her taped up knee throughout the fight. And I know that Emmy had I think she had knee surgery in 2019.
Actually, if you look at her left knee, you can see the tape that's around. I think that was the knee that she had surgery injection on.
Yeah, so I remember because I was surprised when this fight was announced because when she won the Pancrase Championship, she had like knee surgery done, and she was on like I think YouTube videos with Sugiyama, and she was like hobbling around. And I think it's fair to say that at 40 years old, Fujina's body is fairly compromised. I think she fights with a lot of injuries, and I think her knee was really bothering her this fight. Especially, I think in the third round, there was a moment where she just fell down backwards for no reason. And so I think Ayaka was kind of taking advantage of that. But if you look at Ayaka's face too, she took some damage too from Emi's punches. And I think this fight's also characterized by the fact that I think Emi was excited to fight for Rising, but afterwards, based on their comments, you got the idea that neither one of them really wanted to fight each other. And they were both like...
It's because of the fact that this fight couldn't live up to the hype that it had 12 years ago when they first fought.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that fight necessarily had a bunch of hype behind it at that time, because Ayaka I don't think at that time Ayaka had won the Invicta title and all that stuff yet. So I think probably
of course.
Most hype now.
At that particular time, Emi Fujino didn't fight Jessica Aguilar.
Right. And I will say that, I mean, Rena was sitting ringside, and even she tweeted like she didn't really want to see these two fight each other. So I think it was just two really popular kind of veterans that fought, and everyone was enjoying that. And I think that it's just the case of that they're both getting very close to the end of their careers. And I think Emi will probably retire before Ayaka. Well, I don't know. Emi's crazy. I think Emi wants to fight forever. So, but I think both of them are getting near the end of their careers. And they wanted to put on a striking exchange because they said they wanted to show like young fighters how to have an exciting fight. But I'm just rambling now. But Emi's also she cuts really easily. And all of her stoppages have been cut related. She's never been legitimately knocked out or submitted. And she gets cut really easily. So I think it was no surprise to me that she got cut during the fight and her eye got messed up.
So you said that the tail end of their careers, Jack, I want to ask this is a non-title fight for Hamazaki. What is there next to do with Hamazaki, considering the lack of competition that there is in atomweight now in Japan, and just is it just gonna be non-title fights against former opponents, or what do you do with Hamazaki next?
Before I get to that, I want to say I think that it was interesting before the fight, Charles. I think you made the prediction that we were going to see sort of kickboxer Ayaka again, that was going to hunt for some sort of stoppage, because we've seen that in her previous fights. That was sort of what made the Kana Asakura fight so exciting, the rematch between them. I think that the issue with the division obviously is that the pandemic has split the global super atomweight division in half. The Invicta division and the Rizin division really fed off each other in a way that was really sustainable, and we don't have that. I think that the issue is that there's people that you can bring up from Deep Jewels who are arguably Rizin worthy, but the issue is that, I mean, can you give them a title fight? Can you justify that to a Rizin crowd, that someone is just coming up from the regional scene and immediately getting a title fight? I don't know. But bringing in Deep Jewels people is, it seems like a no-brainer. That needs to happen.
What do you, Charles? You've been going to the Deep Jewels shows. You've been seeing how these atomweights are. They just had the atomweight tournament. What do you think? Do you think that I'm forgetting who won it. Was Hikaru Ono who won it?
Saori Oshima.
Oh, sorry, Oshima. Yes. Do you think that she should be next in line for Hamazaki for a title shot, even though she's not on a Rizin? Or what would you do with Hamazaki at this point?
So Saori Oshima is actually Ayaka Hamazaki's training partner.
Oh, never mind. So that's not going to happen then.
It might happen, but I think it's kind of far-fetched. Plus, Saori Oshima is legitimately a microweight. I mean, she walks around at 44 kilograms, so she's absolutely tiny.
Oh my God.
And
how much in pounds is that? Like 95 pounds?
That's like 99, like close to 100 pounds, I think. Like 97 pounds, maybe.
So she had to put on weight to get on.
Yeah. And I think what's clearly happening is they're angling for Seika Izawa is fighting Siwoo Park in October at 49 kilograms, super atom weight. And Seika Izawa, they obviously or clearly want the winner of that fight to go to Rising because they're fighting at the division that only Rising has. And my theory would be that they let that person fight Kana Asakura. And if they beat Kana Asakura, then they can have a legitimate title fight. Or they have them fight Miyu Yamamoto. They have them fight one of those two to legitimize the winner getting a title shot.
Miyu still is in Japan.
Yes.
She still is so she is still there to fight whenever.
Ditto Kyle Agumon.
But I think they're trying to build up Seika Izawa personally. She Olympic level judoka, Olympic level wrestler, sumo background. She's extremely tough, and she's already beat Ayaka Hamazaki's teammate. She became the Deep Jewels strawweight champion in her third fight, and I think she's the one that they want to bring over.
I mean, I understand them bringing over. I mean, Deep Jewels bringing over these strawweight fighters down from 115 pounds to 108. But wouldn't it be harder for the microweight fighters? You know, the 99-pound, don't call them weakling fighters that are trying to at least build up towards big fights like that? I mean, I'm not trying to say they should eat a hamburger or anything, but still, wouldn't it be harder for the microweights than the strawweights to fight and rise?
Well, I agree. That's why I think Saudi Oshima should stay in Deep Jewels, just because the reach difference alone. I mean, she's tiny. I mean, she's got to be 4'9", 4'10". So she's gonna have a hard time fighting anyone that's tall.
So what do you think? So you said, Charles, that you think that Fujino's gonna fight until she either retires or maybe she'll be one of those. You know how fighters always say, "Oh, I'm gonna die in the ring." Maybe that'll be her one day.
Well, I mean, I think Emi Fujino used to say she was gonna retire when she was 30, and she's 40 now. So I don't think she's ever going to retire.
What was the nickname they gave her again? What's her? It's like the Super Bomb Angel or something.
Oh, and I mean her nickname.
Kamikaze Angel. Special
Kamikaze Angel. She kind of laughs about. If you ask her about, she kind of laughs because that's kind of like a nickname that people asked for. Like it's not. No one calls her that.
It is an awesome nickname.
Promotion gave her. Yeah.
That is an awesome nickname, though.
If one thing I thought was interesting about this was, I didn't mention this in the lead up to the fight, but when this fight was announced, the immediate thing I thought of was in the lead up to Rizin 14, in one of the confessions shows, there was like a dinner with like 5 fighters and both of them were there. And my immediate thought was like, I would not want to fight someone who I would be casually going out for dinner with. Like that just, I feel like mentally that would just mess with you. And I totally agree with the theory that these people probably didn't want to fight each other because, I mean, would you want to fight your friend other than jokingly? You know, probably not.
Plus, going back to Andrew's earlier point about this being a striking affair, Emi's like predominant strength is literally her strength. She's like a power lifter. She's absolutely jacked.
Did you see her at the weigh-ins?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was like, I was just surprised by like how actually jacked she is.
So I mean, Ayaka just didn't want to clinch with her, didn't want to have, her strength to be most evident in grappling exchanges. So I think that's why she wanted to strike. Plus, Ayaka's obsessed with knocking someone out recently. And I think she thought she could damage her with the leg kicks, which I think she did. I just thought Emi gutted her way through it, then got a leg injection the next day.
So a question for the esteemed panel. Rizin worthy for Fujino. Do you think they'll bring her back? Would you bring her back? What do you think, Charles?
I like Emi Fujino, but I think I would rather see her go back to Pancrase and defend her Pancrase championship, because at this point it's just them bringing in people for Ayaka to fight. And since we've already seen that fight, and unless they want to see her fight Kana Asakura or Miyu Yamamoto, but there's no reason for her to fight Ayaka again.
Well, is there any strawweights right now? What's the strawweight division like in Pancrase? I know
there is. It's one of the former date girls, the Pravjara girls.
I thought she was flyweight. I thought she was flyweight.
There's both. There's 2. There's Karen and Nori.
Nori, the Norwegian one, the one that you can't type. You have to.
Yeah, Nori is flyweight and Karen is strawweight.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, Jack,
I
what do
mean,
you?
come to think of it, CJ, didn't you or Drake Riggs put out a profile on one of those date girls?
I've interviewed them and put out articles on them. Yes.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I saw you. I saw you having your article. I think it was Nori. No,
Yeah.
no, and yeah, poor you having to type in that.
Oh.
Every time.
That was a definitely a copy and paste move. I was not trying to figure out how to type a Nordic O every time.
Mm.
I have a question. So, what about food? If you were to bring Fujino back, would you? I mean, would you? What about a fight against like Miyu? If we were talking about strength versus strength, is that an interesting fight, or is that kind of like I don't know?
Well, it's an interesting fight because you can market it two ways. I mean, they're both over 40. So you can kind of have it like when Randy Couture fought Mark Coleman and be like, the combined age of these people in the ring is over 100 years old. And they're both at similar points. I mean, I think probably Miyu is probably taking way less physical damage than Emmy just by having a lot shorter MMA career. But
I mean, come to think of it, Miyu doesn't do a lot of damage in her MMA career. All of her wins have been via decision.
Oh, but she hits really hard. I mean, she really hurt Saudi Ishioka really bad.
I think it's worth noting, she's wrestled for an eternity, and that can mess you up.
No, I agree.
Really bear down on you.
I was just thinking of I'm not belittling her very long wrestling career. I'm just talking about like the actual literal damage of taking punches.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
I mean, I think Emi Fujino probably got hit 1,000 times by Jessica Aguilar in the World Series of Fighting.
Oh, don't forget, she also took all those punches from Weili Zhang before Weili Zhang was famous. If you look at her record, there's a lot of people who have Wikipedias on her record. So
it's also kind of funny. The next day, she was on social media and she's going to work, and she just had like sunglasses on and her hair down over her face.
Oh, for this fight?
She works for the lawyer that sponsors the Asakura brothers, who owns Triforce.
Imagine going to the law offices of whoever, and you just see that the head lawyer, whoever. She comes in and she's got just that big eye, just with a big bandage over it, and you're just.
A more realistic example would be going into a law office and you see someone that's been in a car accident answering the phones. And then you turn around, and there's Mikuru hanging out the water cooler. And then you turn around and Kai is by the vending machine.
That would make for a way better commercial than Jim Adler would here in the state of Texas.
What about you, Jack? Do you think that Emmy, do you think she should get another shot at an Rizin fight, or what do you think? What do you think about her?
Yeah, I mean, if they have a fight for her, I would be more than happy to bring her back here. But the thing is that realistically, this deep into her career, no offense, how many more fights can she have? Should we waste her final fights on just giving her whoever we can in Rizin, or should we try to actually give her meaningful matchups? This is certainly a meaningful matchup, and this is one that not only has a history to it, but is an extremely high-profile fight. But if I were to bring her back to Rizin, I would have to have a reason at this point.
I kind of go along with Jack on that. I would feel like they should be investing. They should be spending the limited events they have investing in some of the younger fighters.
That too. I think. The issue is that every move they've made right now has been short term, and in all fairness, I guess you can sort of sympathize with the fact that at some points they probably thought, okay, we're not going to be in the pandemic for another year, and then a year later they're still in the pandemic and they can't bring people into the country. So
Well, that's the thing. I'm also from the perspective of that there's just not a lot to go around. And if this was during when they could bring anybody from King the Cage or whatever, I'll be like, no, listen, there's tons of talent, but there's just so little that you might just have to book her just because. I mean, there's other than the young fighters from Deep Jewels, there's not a lot out there right now.
So I'd almost think that it'd almost be like a long-term investment move would actually start having some of these Deep Jewels fights on the Rising cards.
And that's the thing. Remember they did it.
Get the audiences introduced to these people.
Remember they had
Sakura fight Edo Takebayashi.
Yeah, was that at atomweight? She missed weight though, I think, right?
She missed weight.
Yeah. And then she missed weight again, Takebayashi, right? She missed weight.
No, it was Sakura, and she's kind of gone off the rails since then after having a heated public fight with Shinyaoki.
Oh yes, I heard. Oh yes, I heard about that. Yeah. So yeah, you had that, and then there was really you had remember you had Mizuki Furuse and Kana Asakura, and then
Right.
you had
Which I would label just as a Kana Asakura fight.
It was, and listen, they labeled her in the in like the things at Furuse as a prospect, but like given her record, that's like not a prospect-ish record at all.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would actually. I know that Deep has to make money too, but like in an ideal world, you put Seika Izawa and Siwoo Park on a Rizin card, and then you have it like as one of the first fights. That way you can build her up to be Hamasaki's next opponent.
And to double back on what y'all are saying, obviously the pandemic is still going on. American and Brazilian fighters can't make their way over to Japan because of the fact that there's still, the risk of COVID. Obviously, why not put those Deep Jewels fighters on that card for Rizin? Why not give them an opportunity to shine? Even though you still got Eru Takabayashi, who still has weight issues, I wouldn't mind seeing her on a future Rizin card as well if she can, either get the right opponent that's in her natural weight class or, make it easier for her to drop weight and fight somebody.
I hate to be a dick. It is not Edo Takayabashi that's having the weight
Go
problem.
ahead. I enjoy being a dick on a regular basis. But go ahead and be on the move.
It is not Edo who is having the weight problems. It is Sakura Mori who's having the weight problems.
Oh,
Edo has always made weight and has a fight scheduled coming up soon, actually.
And she would now like a formal apology from everybody.
We got to do what Gabby Garcia had to do when she missed weight by 20 pounds. Whatever it was.
Cry like a bitch in the middle of the ring and then just try to apologize.
So get those.
Was that before or after she got disqualified at shoot boxing for eye pokes?
I think that was after. Oh, that was before.
Yeah,
no, she didn't. Remember, she didn't. She soccer kicked her opponents. Was it? I think
it was Megumi Yabushita she soccer kicked on accident.
That on accident. How do you soccer kick somebody on accident?
You never seen someone burn so many bridges so quickly. It's like, you're gone.
I love Gabby. I talked to her on messaging. She's nice, but how do you just soccer kick somebody by accident in a shoot boxing fight? It's a shoot boxing fight. It's never happened before.
Somebody has punched someone while they're on the ground at the past 2 bare knuckle boxing events, so maybe it's possible.
And Yoel Romero thought that this was a 5-round fight that he just had at Phil Davis. So who knows? Maybe they aren't. Maybe they don't explain the rules to people after all.
You also thinks you can sit on the stool as long as you want.
Yes.
Listen, it's not about the rules; it's how you bend them.
Stoolgate, never forget.
That's true. Before we move on to the next fight, Jack, I want to ask, and Chris, I'll also ask as well, since we all, besides you, Charles, who was there live, what do you think of the English commentary from Damian Brown and Joe Ferraro?
Yeah, it's good. I think that we have now had we've had a good consistent amount of events. I'm cool with this being the team going forward.
Definitely.
Yeah, I have no complaints.
Chris, what do you think about the Aussie and the Canadian? I think Joe Ferraro is Canadian, right?
Yeah, he's from Toronto.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, what do you think about the two pairings?
Well, from the little bit that I saw of it, I'm not gonna say how I watched it. All I'm just saying is I watched the rest of it via the Japanese stream. But from the little bit I saw of Mr. Joe Ferraro of Oakville, Ontario, Canada, and Damian Beatdown Brown from Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, I do think that if Damian Brown doesn't get back into Rizin as a competitor, and Frank Trigg's still going to be doing refereeing throughout the West Coast in the United States, I would not mind seeing these two as the main commentary crew for Rizin going forward with a few little, with a few backups in mind for Brown if he does get back into the ring for Rizin or into the cage for whomever. You got to think about it. Ben the Win is there. You got to think that Anthony El Toro Burchak, he's still available. I mean, obviously, he just got released after his third stint in the UFC, so of course he would want to commentate for Rizin again after that fiasco that happened with, the guy that y'all know who I'm talking about, right? When he commentated with that one guy.
Oh, you're talking about who's that? I know you're talking about the guy that's the wrestler. Who's an idiot.
Oh, we're talking about Matt Striker?
No, not Matt Striker.
No, he did a good job. Matt Striker did a great job.
The
guy that guy who had all those sexual innuendos.
Idiot, yeah, the guy that.
Joe Warren.
He's obsessed with wrestlers. He's like, if anybody had wrestler on their like little info sheet, he's like, they're going to win because he was like, wrestling beats everything.
Yeah,
Amir Ali Ferrari's going to destroy a Crow Cop because he's a wrestler.
Yeah, but there was another guy who, just scrapes the tip of my tongue, so to speak. But still,
I will say I enjoyed it when Heath Herring did commentary.
Mm-hmm.
He was good.
Heath Herring would be a great backup choice too. But I'm just saying, if Damian Beatdown Brown ain't gonna be fighting in Rizin for the time being, and you got Heath Herring doing refereeing gigs all throughout, from Oregon all the way down to Mexico, I wouldn't mind seeing Damian Beatdown Brown and Joe Ferraro do more commentary for Rizin, with obviously the backups being Ben Nguyen, Anthony Burchak, and Heath Herring, if that opportunity comes alive.
I always thought King Mo was a good commentator too, and with his perspective of the Japanese fight scene, it might be fun to see him in there too.
It would be fun to see King Mo commentate, but you gotta think about it. He hasn't commentated an MMA fight probably since, there were times where he done like little indie shows for the United Fight Alliance, but he hasn't commentated a major JMMA show since Dream.
Yeah, didn't he used to commentate
to be fair,
the Invicta FC? And he used to commentate the Invicta FC shows, I believe.
Yeah, he did. He used to commentate for Invicta.
Most people who are doing the commentary for the Rizin shows, I don't think they've done like commentary at all before. So it's I'm not concerned about him not having too much experience recently.
I was just want to say it's funny. I don't know if anybody else heard this, but I'm pretty sure it was Shingo like sending like translations to either probably Joe Ferraro, but I would hear the line or WhatsApp thing, I guess, go off. I would hear that.
Oh, the line noise for his like the Japanese version of WhatsApp.
Yes, yeah. It was either line or WhatsApp, whichver one it was. But I definitely heard
that. It was WhatsApp. It was WhatsApp because I thought my WhatsApp was going off. So
I don't think that's a criticism. I think that's just funny. I think that's just I don't think that's like a bad thing at all. I just think that's funny because like
Joe Warren aside, like the number one criticism usually I think is more based on like connectivity issues with the commentary.
Oh, but this time it didn't happen. I think it's the first time where nobody like if it happened, I didn't notice, but like where somebody's internet or microphone dropped. So I think this is this is the first time where there was no audio issues.
There was connectivity issues on my end as far as watching the English version, which is why I was watching the Japanese version most of the way through. But aside from that, I would not mind seeing Joe Ferraro and Damian Brown commentate more often. That's what I gotta say about it.
Mm-hmm. And with that being said, Jack, we're gonna have to give you an award because you are the biggest Yusuke Yachi cheerleader here. You're entirely behind him, and I can see. Go ahead, sir.
Listen, first of all, thank you for this award. I want to thank everyone who brought me here. No, but if he would have lost, I would have actually turned down my invitation to be here. But no, just kidding. But no, I'm not a cheerleader of him. Actually, I was one of the people who, deep down, to be honest with you, I thought he was going to lose this because I thought this was a severe increase in competition compared to his last fight. But it made for actually quite a competitive fight, and one that in retrospect was a pretty good booking to make.
This fight reminded me of the old the closest to the old Yusuke Yachi before he had his makeover, his new makeover, new striking coach, his sequel. And just so we know, Yusuke Yachi defeated Koji Takeda by decision in a fight that he almost got caught in Takeda's special move, the Kimura, which I think that's Charles. Isn't that the move that he's finished Jiri Ohara with both times? The same exact way.
I'd have to double check that, but yeah, that's suplex straight to the submission. I thought was pretty cool. That was fun to watch. That is a move he has finished Ohara with. Only once though. He only finished with it once.
So Charles, being there in the arena, what did you think of this fight? What was the audience's, I guess, energy for this fight? And what do you think of Yachi after this fight?
I mean, Yachi's. I don't think he's as popular as he used to be, but I think he still has quite a fan base. And I thought it was an exciting fight. I mean, of all the decisions on the card, this was one of the more exciting ones because it went back and forth. Both fighters had their moments. And afterwards, Takeda was walking around the arena with a rag wrapped around his head from the bad cut. So,
I saw the post-fight press conference. He looked like a pirate. He looked like a pirate.
That like rag wrapped around.
It was also the shittiest wrap I've ever seen. Like for a pork, I was like, I don't even know if there was a bandage put on. It just looked like he just got wrapped up and was like
someone just gauzed his head and sent him out to go be free.
Oh, I felt so bad for him. I felt so bad for him, especially because he almost won. I thought that Yachi was going to tap with that move or get his shoulder broken, or arm or whatever. Can we also point out that Yachi tried to end the fight with the Miyata running knee that happened.
He connected with that.
I think it was 3 years since Yamamoto, since Kid died. So I felt like it was like an homage to Kid that he was doing.
Which is funny because he was doing that to Takeda, who trains at Miyata's gym. Just a very interesting thing that I thought was funny and was not expecting as well. Here, Jack. What do you think of Yachi's performance in this one versus the Kawana fight? Do you think that this was a much better representation of Yachi going forward with this whole sequel thing?
Yeah. Well, Jack, as a Yachi stan, can you tell us?
I'm not a Yachi stan. I'm far from that. But I will say this. I think that if there's one thing to say about his performances since his return, quote unquote, it's that we have seen, I think, a more composed version of him. Someone who is still taking risks. I mean, you're always taking risks in MMA, but we are seeing a much more put together version of him, which isn't going to get caught in things like, well, most of his losses were him getting caught in things. So I think that, unfortunately, is the way he's fighting now as fan friendly as it was before? Absolutely not. But is it going to win him more fights? Well, we've seen the answer to that question.
The thing, though, is when you say that get him lost, listen, that there always seems to be a moment where he always comes close to losing, even in the fights that he's won, like the Gomi fight. He almost got knocked out by Gomi. With the Gustavo fight, he got knocked out.
He did get knocked out in that one.
That's what makes his fights exciting, though. That's what generates interest. If you're just, after Mike Tyson knocked out 30 people, people stopped buying the pay-per-views because they didn't want to pay $60 for a 10-second fight. So when you watch a guy that it's kind of like Takeru in K1, like he gets hit. There is a chance the guy, anybody could win this fight. I think it makes it more exciting.
Well, I mean, that's sort of I totally agree with that, because when you think about it, his performance against O'Hara a year ago, that he took a beating in that one. Yeah. But the thing is about that fight is that he took a beating, but he was in that fight, and there was a little bit of chance that he could have actually won that fight. And I mean, that's why they brought him back after that, because when you look at his record and after that fight, that the record is awful at that point, and it's like, well, you should never come back. But he comes back because he's entertaining to a lot of people.
Are you sure that those suitcases filled with Yogi-Bo money aren't the reason they brought him back?
I'll just say, yeah. He's not,
by suitcases, I mean beanbag chairs stuffed with 1,000 yen notes.
I was gonna say, he may not be as popular, but listen, he's got the Yogi-Bo CEO, whoever, as back. That's what matters most.
That's true. To join the Jack's Yachi stand train. If he does beat all of these regional champions,
okay. So
sorry, Charles. It'll be quite the journey we've been on. It'll be quite the journey.
Going to lead me to.
It'll be quite the journey we've been on. We've seen him at his highest of highs. We've seen him crash, and now we're seeing him go back up. It's a great journey to watch.
I apologize, Chris. I gotta really bring this up. So post fight, he said he beat Kawana Shuto. He said he beat Takeda deep. He did something that I was really like, and he said he was deserving of a title shot next. He neglected to mention
Kume.
Yes, hold on, Chris. He neglected to mention Pancras lightweight champion Takasuke Kume. I do not know why he did not mention Pancras, because Pancras right now, as far as I don't know if it's out on the level of Shuto versus Deep versus Pancras, but I don't know. Charles, which one is like the highest, would you say, out of those three? Probably.
I mean, Deep, Pancrase, and Shuto?
Yeah, if there's one.
I mean, I'd say that Deep and Pancrase are clearly higher ranking than Shuto.
Okay.
Like respectability at the current moment.
How so? Is he says that he beats two of the small promotion champions and is neglecting Pancras. I'm sorry, he does not know. He does not get a. I don't think he absolutely deserves. He does not deserve a title shot without going through Kume.
Well,
Yeah, I think he's got to finish it.
Yeah.
To play devil's advocate here, and you guys are going to go. Okay, of course, you're playing devil's advocate for him, but I think that the thing he's seeing is that New Year's Eve is coming up. If he wants a title fight and he asks for it, they're probably going to say, "Well, we don't really have any other guys to put in a title fight. Sure, go ahead, have this title fight." You know
that the fight so happened a little over a year ago. First round finish. I don't think he's deserving of it at all. He needs to go.
But who are they going to put him? Who are they going to book for a title fight New Year's Eve? Like they need New Year's Eve fights. And if Yachi's going to call for a fight and he's defeated two regional champions, why would they be like, no, you have to beat someone else?
Well, because
and then you can pay him in like March. You know,
to throw this back in Jack's face, they should slow cook this. They need to actually rehabilitate him.
Yeah,
but
the two wins together, then throw him back against Souza. Because if he loses to Souza, it's over.
I'll say this:
champion twice in a row.
I agree with you in the sense that I personally, when he said that he wants a title fight, I was like, wait, this isn't in the script. You have more people to beat. Like, come on, let's keep this.
And here's the thing, I thought he didn't say Kume because I thought maybe they fought like in the past before, but I looked at his record, they never fought before. And Kume just fought recently in Rizin, just this year. So it's just I'm like.
My theory the only possible theory is he's like Takeda beat Kume and I beat Takeda, so
we're doing the
therefore
MMA match.
I beat Kume, but I want to see that fight. And I mean that fight to me I'm actually more interested in that fight because of the storyline than the Souza fight. That probably puts me in the minority, but I like storylines.
Let me get this clear. I agree with you on that. That I think that fight makes more sense right now, like 100%. But I'm just trying to say that from Yachi's perspective, I think he's calling for a title fight because he realistically could get one. You know,
Rizin say that they're going to be doing another. What are they going to? I know they're doing the Landmark show. Aren't they doing another show in October as well?
They are, and I think it's in Yokohama.
Okay, you can
Rizin 20 or Rizin 31.
Mm-hmm.
Do Yachi Kume then?
Well, so basically that would lead to this question from me. With the fact that, Yusuke Yachi said he defeated all the lightweight champions of Japan without, fighting Takasuke Kume or Pancrase, should he face Takasuke Kume before eventually facing Alberto Satoshi de Souza?
Absolutely.
See, I wanted this journey to go so much longer. I wanted him to fight Zest champions. I wanted him to fight outsiders people. I wanted him to literally be showing up at a Shuto event in northern Japan and being like, you're the northern Japan Shuto champion. I challenge you now. I wanted a whole journey.
Bring in the Heat champion. Bring in the champion, lightweight champion for Heat. But he's saying, I and first of all, also let's be honest as well. The fight against Kawano wasn't some big impressive victory. The Takeda one was more impressive, but he also got his ass. He almost got his arm snapped in the first rounds, and this could have been all kibosh. So listen. If he had finished both of them, I would maybe be a little bit more lenient. But no, it was 3 decision wins. One where he coasted and kind of easily just did bare minimum, and for the second one, he almost got his arm snapped.
I think
this is a whole case of striking while the iron's hot, and New Year's Eve is around the corner. Everyone is talking about wanting to fight on that card, and he wants to be on that card. And I mean, in MMA, you got to be selfish, and your career isn't forever. And he's thinking, what's the biggest fight I could probably get? And he's probably thinking of the Souza fight. Whereas he is a jealous, selfish fan. I'm I want to see you finish beating the champions first.
I do too.
Then get that fight.
I think all of us are pretty much on the same page here because I agree with all of you guys that he should fight more of the regional guys first. But I think that it's a mixture of him wanting to be on New Year's Eve and wanting a title fight, and also him knowing the fact that Rizin probably want to stack their New Year's Eve as much as possible, and him facing a champion is certainly a way of making a loaded lineup. I mean, we have to think about it. I think it's this year. It is going to be a challenge to make a great New Year's Eve lineup when you're talking about people who are only within the country.
So, but if they're doing the show in October, that's they could they could have him fighting at the Yokohama show in October, and then 2 months, presuming he wins that, then give him the title shot. Or
I think you're trying to kill Yachi. I think you're trying to kill him.
This Cowboy Cerrone trying to have him fight 9 times a year.
Well, yeah, he set himself up. He said that he wanted to fight all the regional champions. You don't just get to say you fight 2
True.
And then forget Pancrase, the oldest promotion out of all of them, if I'm correct. So
wasn't Rings? Is Rings? Got to find out who the last Rings champion was and bring him out.
And actually, speaking of Rings, let's bring in the outsider lightweight champion as well.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're. Yeah, like you said,
Zest fighting Nexus. I want everybody.
Exactly.
I need him to go over to LFA and Fury FC and start fighting their champions.
Yeah. Find out who the old PXC champion was. Bring him back over. I want everybody. No,
Could've
but
been him.
wait, actually,
I still think the Kume fight.
Former PXC champion too.
He did fight for PXC, I believe.
Yeah, former PXC featherweight champion, but I don't think he would be wanting to fight overseas in the U.S.
That's where he lost to Volkanovski in a random UFC crossover.
Yeah, that wouldn't work, dude. Let's be real. But still, I would not mind seeing Yachi get that opportunity to fight De Souza, but I think we are all in agreement that in order for that to happen, he would have to win over Takezawa Kume if that fight comes to fruition.
I'm
also saying, why can't the Kume fight be on the New Year's Eve card, though? Because, I think the Kume and Takeda fight was awesome.
Hey, maybe backstage when Yachi got back there, he got a very stern talking to that. No, you're not facing a champion. You're going to face Kume next, and that's going to happen on New Year's Eve. You're not getting a title shot next.
Here's like Charles.
They might be smuggling Musayev back into the country to have him fight Satoshi again.
Well, did they say that is it New Year's going to be 2 shows again this year?
They haven't announced anything. I think that the rumor is that Rising is trying to do 1 show, and that there's a last ditch effort to try to put together the Takeru Tenshin fight. But that's just rumors.
So, one question. So, if they were to do 2 shows, remember when Tenshin said, "Hey, can you book me for the show on 31st after winning his fight in 29?" If Yachi wins against Kume, Toshi Souza doesn't have a long train trip from Hamamatsu. He wins. He can challenge Soja 2 days later.
Listen, I think telling Yachi to fight 3 times in four months, it's a bit of a hard sell.
Or do a landmark show. Do it at the one of these random landmark shows. It's just I don't know. It bothered me because I thought, like Charles, I thought he was gonna fight, at least the top 3. Now he's just like the top 2, top 2.
Yeah. I wanted to see him show up to Mikuru's YouTube fight series where the fights are all 1 minute. I wanted him to be everywhere, fighting everybody.
What do you say? He should beat up Shibatar next?
Yeah, fight Shibatar in one of those 1 minute fights that Mikuru hosts.
It feels like it's just a chapter is like being taken out of this, and I like the idea at first because it seemed like, oh, okay, we could go that way, but now he's just saying, oh no, now I deserve a title shot. And listen, can we be honest? I think 100 out of 100 times Souza beats Yachi, because if he decides not to strike, he'll just choke out Yachi from wherever he wants because Souza can do that, right? Am I wrong in thinking that Yachi has,
I would never say that somebody would beat someone 100 out of 100 times because things happen. I mean,
Souza had that freak weird fight with Johnny Cage,
Johnny Case,
who probably won't be back in Rising anytime soon. So, so I think anything can happen. Yeah,
I guess anything. But I mean, after watching these 2 fights, I wasn't so sure. Oh yeah, this guy definitely has what it takes to beat Yachi. To beat Souza.
Yeah, but I mean, I am hesitant to say that somebody that can knock somebody out loses 100 out of 100 fights.
Also, don't forget he knocked out Yachi, by the way, as well. The jiu-jitsu
guy. He stunned him and then ground and pounded him.
When he could have submitted him with anything at that point, but he was just like, I'm just gonna TKO this guy.
Also, that's not Yachi's fault. That's just the universe never letting me be right when I've said that Satoshi will lose every fight he's been in.
Oh, so So hold on, you saying that the universe, when you say Satoshi wins, he loses?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know about that yet because I've never said that.
Well, actually, Takeda. What do we do with Koji Takeda after his eye heals up, Charles? Does he fight Yuri Ohara once again for the 1000th time before he comes back to Rizin?
Just one or two routes you can take. Either have him go down to deep, fight a couple times and bring him back up, or just bring him immediately back to Rising. I mean, I have no problem seeing him back in Rising competing. He's young, he's exciting, and he's marketable.
He's like 26, but because of his tan, he looks so wrinkly and he looks like he's 50. He has I refuse to believe that this tan, look how tan this guy is. I've never seen, what is it? I've never
Have you seen, you mentioned the line earlier. Miyata posted a message he got from him, and his little avatar online is just like a black, like a black guy in a gi. And I'm like, yep, that's about as tan as he is. Yeah, I've never seen someone have the Hulk Hogan hot dog tan as strongly as Takeda.
Jack, what about
basically you're saying that Koji Takeda is crispier than a KFC bundle?
Yeah. I think he gets darker every time I see him more when he fights. I don't know, or if he just darkens himself before his fights, but I don't know. But the Kume fight that he had last time, I don't think he was as dark as he was this time. I don't know. Has he ever said like why he does the tanning?
Was there a fight where somebody in the lead up said they were going to punch his tan off?
Oh God!
I honestly think somebody said that.
What was it? Damian Brown? Maybe been Damian Brown who said that.
Possibly. I just remember somebody saying that.
Jack, what would you do with Takeda at this point? Would you agree with Charles? Goes back to deep, defends the lightweight championship against I don't know whoever's next in line. And then come back, presuming he wins or whatever.
He can do whatever. I mean, I think the invitation's always there for him to come back to Rizin, because not only is he a good fighter, but his record is he's actually on paper pretty good. Has a pretty good record in MMA. So it's not like he's some guy who has this rocky record and it's like, oh, okay, now he's like 11-8 or something. Like he's 11-2. He is probably one of the better guys you can get on this regional sort of level. So yeah, I would say I don't know what's next for him, but I would be surprised if we never saw him in Rizin again. Like I would be shocked. He's
a fun guy to watch too, because you can like lean over to the person you're sitting with watching and be like, oh, he throws people. It's kind of like watching Rampage back in the Pride days, being like, he's going to try to, no matter how this fight goes, he's going to try to suplex his opponent. No matter how much of his own energy he wastes trying to do it, he's going to try to suplex his opponent. So it's kind of fun. He's a fun person to watch.
The only thing that happens with him in his fights is that, I remember this happened in the Kume fight. It seems like he gets it. Did they say what injury he had? Was it just like a punch? I don't think it was a broken orbital bone. Did they say that, Charles, if you happen to know?
I wasn't able to see it, and I don't have like the benefit of instant replays, but I thought I saw like an ear injury.
Oh, I think didn't his cauliflower ear start bleeding? Was that?
I think the bandage had to do with his ear, but I may be
wrong.
Oh,
I thought it was his eye. I thought it was his eye that because his eye was all like.
I may be wrong.
It looked like a cantaloupe. It looked like a cantaloupe when when the fight ended. That's the one thing I think in the Kume fight as well. The same thing happened to the same eye. I think the same eye got the swollen thing around. No, he's an exciting fighter. First, he was kind of like so, but like he that Kume fight really turned me around, and so did the Achi fight as well.
Plus, Miyata's gym is looking better and better these days too, because Ito also trains there, and Miyata's gym has really rehabbed Ito's career. He looks like a stud now too.
I do think at this point though, from a fight perspective, had Takeda won, I feel like it would have been more interesting to see Souza and Takeda, just because those two haven't fought, and
it's always interesting to watch a wrestler fight a jiu-jitsu guy, because the question becomes like, can the jiu-jitsu guy get the wrestler down?
But I think that Takeda's striking would also is levels above Souza, where I don't know if Souza would want to try to strike him, even though Souza is a pretty good striker himself. I mean, we saw what happened with Musayev when he tried to. How that fight, the wrestler didn't win. The wrestler and striker didn't win.
Yeah, but to throw your guys' logic back to you is also the wrestler that was like recently fighting in a war who had to do a quarantine for a
Yeah,
month.
that's true. Oh no, of course, no, of course. I think it, and it sucks because now Takeda has to get to at least for me, he would have to get to the back of the line because he lost this, which it sucks. But maybe they could do the fight down the line.
In a way, I still think that Koji is, Rizin worthy because who does he have to contend with in deep? Nobody. And as far as obviously the talent pool goes, much like how it is in the super atomweight division and every division up past 77 kilos or 170 pounds, most of the lightweights that come into Rizin are foreign born. So, who better to have continue his career in Rizin for the time being than Koji Takeda? I mean, I know we said that Yusuke Yachi should face off against Takasuke Kume before facing Roberto Satoshi de Souza. Maybe Koji Takeda would probably get another Rizin bout before the year's done as well.
Maybe they should do Takeda Juri Ohara in Rizin. Just have it on a different stage. Or you know what? How about Takeda? How about Takeda and Kitaoka? Kitaoka seems to be willing to fight anybody and everybody.
I think Kitaoka has a fight scheduled coming up, actually.
Oh yes, he does. And funny, I think Takeda was the guy who beat him to get the deep title. I believe, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna move on to the next fight, a featherweight bout. Yoshinori Horie defeating Okazaki. Sorry, Christian.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's please move on because I think our time is about to be constrained here.
Gotcha. So yeah, we had Okazaki going up in weight to 145, taking on Horie. It was I thought a very disappointing 145 debut in Rizin for Sasaki. As you can see, he had tape all over him. He looked like a mummy. I think I saw somebody comment that Poirier should just remove the tape because that might just make Sasaki just like disintegrate or something. It looked like he was really legitimately being held by all that tape. So, Charles, did you know if there was any injuries or something going into this for Sasaki?
I didn't hear anything now.
So I mean, Sasaki didn't look bad, but it was just like I don't know. I thought it was so funny because I think I mentioned during the preview that I wonder, I don't think the cardio thing would be an issue, but it seems like Sasaki was getting very tired during this fight as it wore on. Charles, sorry, go ahead.
It was a tough fight for him to make his re-entrance into the division with.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Against, yeah.
What do you think of Horie, how he looked in this fight?
I thought he looked good. Sasaki's a tough guy, and Horier's got kind of a one fight in the UFC, fought abroad, so he kind of got that little crown to be able to throw around. The Japanese fighters like to say, I fought on the global stage, but I thought he looked good, and but it wasn't like a super dominant performance either.
Basically, Charles, what I was trying to say is, Yoshinori Horie can say, I got knocked out by Hakeem Dawodu, and that was my only time in the UFC. But in Rizin, I'm starting to be a bigger and bigger star.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Charles.
No, I mean, he's a young guy, but I this wasn't like a fight that I'd write home to anybody about. And especially, I think it had the misfortune of happening after the Ota fight.
Yeah.
Which kind of just like turned people off. But yeah.
Jack, what do you think about this fight for Horie? Rise is definitely putting a lot of stock into a 145 division at this point. They also announced that Saito would be fighting, I think, at the Yokohama card. Am I right, Charles? They said that he would be on there.
Yeah, he was supposed to fight Koike, but Kleber said he couldn't make weight in time, and it seems to be like, in my personal opinion, this is just my thought. Koike was like, "Oh, I can't make weight in time for that, but I can make weight in time for New Year's Eve." So I think he just wants to fight on the New Year's Eve card and doesn't want to fight on the October card.
Like how long? Like what are we cutting from? Like 2 months? I've cut weight like 2 weeks. Well,
I think he was like a mixture of like an injury and cutting weight. So, but I think it's just an angle of him trying to get on the New Year's Eve card. So now Saito's fighting someone else.
Yeah, fair enough. Listen, you gotta hustle for that New Year's Eve card, of course. So yeah, what do you think, Jack, of Horier's performance in this fight?
Well, this entire fight, the only thing I could think of is why did the UFC let this guy go after one fight? To me, what is so interesting is that his one fight was a loss to Hakeem Dawodu, who is in his own right, an incredible featherweight. Why was that? Why did that somehow make the UFC go? We gotta let this
It's
guy go.
actually funny.
I think the unfortunate thing is that every fight after that, now that we see Horian, it's just going to further be a testament to these guys really let a good one go.
So Jake Riggs, when he interviewed Poirier, when he had his fight against Tetsuya Seki, his Rizin debut, he asked him about that. And Poirier kind of danced around the question. It was a very odd answer that he gave. It was like a non-answer. And I don't know what happened, because that never happened. That rarely happens in UFC.
Yeah.
I wonder, my guesstimation is, I don't know. I feel like there's some sort of management involvement with that. I can't see him doing anything like stupid that would get him fired. Plus, I think we'd hear about that. I feel like there has to be like some sort of internal management thing with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too conspiracy about it, but like the thing is like if he's UFC level, the UFC will bring him back, so I that's just what confuses me about it is like why did he get cut? I don't know. The whole thing is confusing about me, but I don't think there's anything. Maybe there was a management issue, but like the conspiracy stuff about like drug tests or whatever, I don't buy into any of that because that would be public information.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. No, you're correct about that. I don't know what it is either. If I ever get the chance to interview him, I'm just going to ask him out. Like, do you know why you were cut, or like, do you have a theory why you were cut?
I asked him, and he said he didn't know. So if he does know, he's not going to tell us, and if he doesn't know, then well, he doesn't know. So
us Japanese MMA fans will just claim that the UFC continues to have a bias against Japanese fighters, and we'll move on, and nobody will ever know the truth.
If you look at this, I mean, if you look at this in a positive way, Hori is on a 2-fight win streak now in Rizin. Wouldn't y'all say that his career has somehow turned a 360?
I would say his career turned to 180, but
right. Because if you turn a 360, you go right back around the same point. But yeah, you can say it's a 180.
I mean, I think he's in a good position right now. That he's putting on good performances. His first fight in Rizin was a pretty good finish for him, and I think even though this wasn't the most exciting fight, this was a win over Ayaka Sasaki. So I think that he has a lot going for him right now.
How many more fights would you say he has to get before he's next in line for whoever? I guess assuming it's Kleber and Saito, how many more fights would you say he has to do? I was theorizing that he should get the winner between Hagiwara and Asakura when that happens. What do you think about that, Charles?
It depends who wins. I mean, if Hagiwara wins, I can see that happening. If Mikuru wins, I feel like you almost need to give Mikuru a higher profile fight just because of how famous he is.
Sure.
But it's Rizin. I mean, that's MMA in general. This isn't like boxing, where there's a commission that tells you who the next title challenger has to be. So, I mean, if his next fight is a super dominant performance, he could be next in line for the title right there. Where if he wins 4 snoozers in a row and he's not generating any interest, he may not get a title fight. So just depends on the quality of his performances and over who.
Any thoughts on that same question, Jack?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a big part of it, in my opinion, is that I don't think that you could really sell a title fight between him right now. I don't think he has to have something more before we put him in a title position, because realistically, I mean, that is still a big component to making these fights. You have to have something that sells. But I mean, how many? I think that he could certainly be put in that title position eventually. I don't think he's one fight away. But I'm interested to see what they do with him, because he certainly is on his way.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, he's definitely on his way, and it definitely seems like Rizin is behind him as a promotion. They're giving him these fights, and they definitely see something in him that the UFC for some reason didn't see. So
and if there's one thing I can say about this fight, it's that I really thought it was interesting that this was a real close fight on paper, and I just thought this was what was neat about this fight is that to me it felt like one of those fights where they were genuinely trying to put two of the best up against each other, you know?
I also do have a theory that I think that Sasaki, he tends to win more fights when he has more crazier hair. So, and unfortunately, in this fight, he did not have any crazy hair. So I don't know if there's like a some sort of Eminem-ish curse.
I had crazier hair for this fight.
Save the Eminem curses for Yuki Motoya, okay?
Oh yes. Oh yeah, I forgot he continued the Eminem curse. Oh my god. How could forget about that?
I think when it comes down to Yoshinori Hori, all he would really need going into, a potential Rizin title shot, I think he would need 2 more fantastic finishes. And then he would get that title shot in probably spring of next year, maybe the summer of next year.
What about now Sasaki? His first fight at 145. Charles, what do you think? You should stick at 145? Do you think he should go back to 135? I mean, he's basically said it that he's going to do 145, but I don't know if he's going to have any second thoughts because of the loss.
I don't think his performance looked terrible.
Oh no, absolutely not. Yeah,
I think he looks fine in the division, and he wasn't like getting pushed around or anything. The thing that stuck out to me in the fight, from what I noticed, was it looked like he was shooting in for these takedowns, but he was shooting quite high. He wasn't really getting low, which made me with all the tape, made me wonder if he had like a back injury or something. Because I would think you would want to get significantly lower instead of like these like chest, like bear hug style takedowns he was going for. But I think he looked fine in the division, and he's getting older now, so maybe he's having a hard time making the old weight divisions like he used to. And I think he looks fine in the division.
What would you do with him next? Is there any particular fight that you would be a good fight for him to take next?
Well, he's had a rough patch. I mean, he's like 1 win, 1 loss. Now it's getting longer to like 1 win, 2 losses, 1 win, 2 losses. So something needs to change. And I'm wondering what it is, because I know that Naoki is going to go back to New York and start training at Longo again and at Sarah again. Now that's possible. And I know Sasaki's married, and I think he has kids. So I don't know if that's possible for him, because I know he used to train there. But something needs to change, because he's kind of in this rut of 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss. So I don't know what needs to change. I just know that something does need to change.
The other thing,
maybe going back to New York will help.
The other thing I thought that he was getting very tired of this fight, and those takedowns, you brought the takedowns. He seemed to be they got lazier and lazier and lazier, or just they just seemed to be very, compared to like takedowns that he's done in the past. Do you think that was he still maybe having effects of the vaccine thing? Remember, he got the vaccine, he got really sick from it. Do you think he maybe came to this fight maybe even sick?
That's possible, but
was that him? I thought that was Panchanrina.
Well, Panchanrina got sick. I don't know if he got sick.
Oh no, that's why. Because remember, he had the press conference. He was not at the initial press conference to announce the fight, because he gave a video thing, because he said, "Hey, I'm still suffering effects of the virus. Not the virus, the vaccine." So
it might have played a role, but still, I just thought his takedowns looked weird to me. They looked sloppy. Like, even if they were well timed, I don't think they would have worked. So I think he needs to do something to change up his training.
Jack, what do you think? What do you think should be next for Sasaki?
Well, I think we should give credit to him first of all, because I think that since he's entered Rizin, every single fight has been a really tough fight for him. If his next fight hypothetically would not be in Rizin, that would be a crime. Because think about the guys he's fought. He has really had some of the biggest matchups in Rizin, and I think that's why his record is a little rocky. Is because when you face the top guys, you're not going to win every single time. I can't pick apart where he should train or not. I mean, being in New York seemed to work for him really well, but if he can't go back to New York, then that can't happen. Let me see how he does against someone who isn't one of the biggest challengers in the division.
Yeah. So here's the thing, Charles, and you'll like this, I think. So New Year's Eve, Satoshi D'Souza comes out. I want to introduce the new training partner of Banzai Gym, Okazazaki.
That'd be hilarious.
It should be like a pro wrestling. It should be like a pro
that.
wrestling thing where he says, here's my new training partner, and then his music hits and he gets his own walkout.
I was gonna say like when Vince McMahon was the higher power, whatever, they just had a guy come out like in a what do you call it? A robe.
Cloaks.
Oh yeah, like a hood, and then he just reveals it. It's Okazazaki as the new Banzai, team member. Well, that's interesting as you bring up because now he's at
To be honest, Andrew, that would be wacky. That would be crazy. And I wouldn't mind seeing Okazaki get an opportunity to fight in Rizin at least a couple of more times before he eventually moves on. Because if you think about it, between him going back to New York and you interviewing him, Andrew, and him going back to Japan, what does he got left for him?
Well, I was about to say, if Bellator, do you think that maybe he can try to do a fight in Bellator or something? Just to change it up?
I don't think he needs to leave Rizin. I think I wouldn't want to see him leave Rizin. He's kind of one of their staple fighters.
And he does have a semi amount of popularity as well, I believe, if I'm correct.
Yeah, he has a popular clothing brand people like to buy. It's like the Lazy God. It has like the sloth on it.
Lazy God, yeah.
Maybe you think of like getting him a fight in Bellator or something at 145 for somebody there, there would be a lot more people to choose from. And you could even fight maybe a person who, I'll say a jobber or someone who's brought in to lose, just to get more.
I agree with your sentiment. Just rehab his career a little bit. Let him take the gas off a little bit and let him rehab his career and let him get some wins together and then start putting him back up against these big names.
I think it was whoever this is like you're getting the first fight at 145 and it's Yoshinori Horie. That's like it's you're really jumping up the ladder like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rungs instead of him fighting some 145 from Deep or Pancras who he might have had a better shot against. So I don't know. That's interesting. So that 808 is coming back to New York, but Sasaki might not. That's interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
But I think Naoki and Mizuki are going to be roommates, so that's a TV show that'd be hilarious to watch.
Just like old times when they were kids, but still, that's not the wackiest thing that happened. That's not the wackiest thing that we're really trying to comprehend about when it comes down to Rizin 30. The wackiest thing that happened, and we're gonna talk about this fight in short order, but the wackiest thing that happened prior to the Shinobu Ota Yuta Kubo fight was the emergence of Kubo's socialite wife singing his entrance theme for him prior to getting into the Rizin ring. Did y'all? Obviously you, CJ, you were there. Me, Andrew, and Jack weren't. Did you see? How did you react to this craziness that happened?
I loved it. I thought it was amazing. It was everything that I wanted for it. And it is why, in my opinion, this fight was made. I may not be like a cat. Like, I don't know if I'm in the norm or if I'm an outlier, but I love crazy gimmicky stuff as long as like people like don't break the gimmick. And the crazy wife making everything about her, making that people are coming to this fight to see her performance, having her own backup dancers, like making the entrance about herself. I thought it was amazing, and I would love to see it again.
I'll say so, Charles. I think you wrote on Twitter, "What is this?" And I replied back, "Cringe," and
but it's cringe in the best way.
But it's cringe, but it's self-aware, or at least it.
I don't think it is self-aware. That's what makes it.
No, but you're getting fooled if you don't think it's self-aware.
See, my theory. So there's that's what makes it so good is the fact that you're like, is she this weird or is she not? But after the performance, like a Rising official just got her and she casually walked over to the side of the ring and sat down. So to me, it's just like, this is a very like gimmicky thing they're doing. and it is tongue-in-cheek. I think it's not real. I think they're leaning into it. I think they discovered that this is a crazy, clever, original way to get attention as a couple, and I think it works. I mean, all of those Rising lead-up videos where she's eating a giant meal in front of him as he's cutting weight, or where she's talking about how watching him grapple with Asakura made her horny, is all just like, I'm like, this is the best type of cringe. And I think I'm with Jack. I think it's self-aware.
Well, I think what the thing that makes it so great is that there is that they do such a good job at trying to make it seem real that you can have that suspension of disbelief.
Yes, exactly.
You know, it's in my opinion, all of this, it's so very sketch comedy, in your face. The jokes are very, blatant, but they do so good at never breaking gimmick ever that you can suspend disbelief and be like, oh my God, this is a real thing. I thought the walkout was great. And I gotta say, too many people online they morphed into pitchfork music reviewers by saying that her voice was awful. She hit a high note during that song. I have to say, she at one point she did hit a high note.
Yeah. What was the audience reaction, CJ, since you were there? What was that?
Amazement, open mouth staring, like what the hell is going on? So
did they like pull down their mask and just like mouth agape? Yeah. Like, what are we watching?
I mean, I loved it. I don't know how everyone else felt. I didn't have a pitchfork. I didn't care. She could have sounded like me singing, and I would have been like, this is absolutely amazing that she is doing this live.
If I could add one thing, I thought that what was really funny about it, you mentioned that the walkout was about her, but Yuta was also walking out with a shirt that was a design of her.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing as well. Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah.
His whole comments are like, I'm fighting to elevate my wife's music career. It's amazing.
They are such a cringe couple. Like, he is like so uncomfortable. He's uncomfortable to look at when he's giving an interview.
But it's brilliant though, because if this is legitimate, like if it's a gimmick, which I think it is, they have created a train wreck that you can't not look at. Like, you have to watch this crazy relationship happen, and it is inherently interesting.
If I can say one thing that sort of talks about this fight, is that the fact that he lost this fight in such a brutal way, if he had no gimmick, maybe that would be the last time we see him. But since he has a gimmick, and even though he lost this fight in such a one-sided affair, since he has this gimmick, he's going to come back. We're going to see him again.
I'm about to say,
I was also laughing like, I'm like, oh, this is what Kubo trained at Miyata's gym. He probably literally went there for 4 months and was like, all right, I'm just going to work on keeping really good wrestlers in my guard and hoping they don't smash my face in.
Also, Ota said that he was going to wrestle him. He literally said that in the press conference every time. He said, oh, I'm just going to wrestle him. I'm not going to strike with him. It was, by the way, we also like...
First off, crazy opening sequence. Yes. He legitimately almost knocked him out in the opening sequence.
That would have been the knockout of the year if that had. That would have eclipsed Jorge Masvidal, Ben Askren, Aoki's getting knocked. That would have been, I think, the knockout. Just imagine all that whole concert and all that stuff. And suddenly he's shooting for a takedown. He puts his foot up, and then Oda just flat lines on the flat facing the canvas. I don't think that would have been I don't think you could have ever had a better knockout than ever. And I was so upset that did not happen. I obviously don't want Oda, but it was just like, it would have just been like, that would have been so magical for like what was going on with this whole fight.
Also, some people might have been bored by this fight, but I was enthralled by this fight, actually, because I assumed if Ota got the takedown that this fight was going to be over in 20 seconds. And the fact that it wasn't, I was just like I was like very interested in like, how is Ota not finishing this fight? How is Kubo surviving? And the one regret that I had about the fight was that Kubo got hesitant. And I thought at the beginning of every round, he knows the takedown is coming, so he should have tried to just throw something. And more often than not, he just was hesitating and got taken down without throwing anything.
I just want to quickly read the comments. Our buddy Codemate Day said that Sarah Kubo. Mm-hmm. By the way, that's funny that she has a foreigner given name. I find that very interesting.
Well, I think it's Sada in Japanese, but her grandfather's Russian.
Oh, okay, that explains that. She calls her one of the best pro wrestling managers in MMA. I think we have to agree with that. Better walkout than Inoue walking out to Maroon 5. I didn't even hear because I didn't even know that.
I don't think that was Maroon 5. I think that was probably Fall Out Boy.
Oh, was that
Naoki-
Imagine Dragons? Was that
Naoki Inoue and Mizuki have a YouTube channel, and Naoki Inoue does not give a shit about his walkout music. There's literally a video where they're like, "How about this song?" And he's like, "I don't care." It's like Mizuki is just like going through it, picking his song. So I don't think he has any connection to his walkout song.
And Kobe Day, I brought up a point that we all made. I think we all agreed on when we previewed the show. Kickboxer can't prepare for an Olympic wrestler in 5 months, and that's the thing. Yeah, that's
not at all.
It's and listen, it's if he had maybe a year, maybe, but if the takedown, if you're going to go against an Olympic wrestler, listen, you may not be able to defend the takedowns, but listen, we saw what Tokoro could do against an Olympic wrestler. But that's Tokoro.
I think the more like the better example in my mind was like the Bay Noah fight, where it's like, yeah, he's making his MMA debut as a kickboxer, but he fought like a kickboxer should fight.
Yeah.
He kind of like tried to avoid his opponent and strike from the outside.
Yeah.
Where, and speaking of this fight with Ota and Kubo, I thought Ota actually came away from it worse public, like PR wise, than Kubo, in that like Sakakibara's got to be scratching his head. Like, if you can't finish Kubo on the ground, like, should we expect any TKOs from you in the future?
By the way, that he got him in an arm triangle choke, and I could tell that was one of the weakest arm triangle chokes I ever. That's like white belt day one level of an arm triangle. Like he could have gotten that in the first minute of the fight, and Kubo could have survived that for the next 4 minutes. That was not. It was a terrible head arm triangle.
I was just really confused that Ota seemed to be unable or unwilling to pass guard. He seemed.
Do you think he knew how to pass guard?
Well, I mean, if you're a wrestler, don't you think you'd work on it? I know that some wrestlers like to hang out in half guard because it keeps the opponent pinned to the ground. But I don't know of anyone that likes to stay in full guard.
Do you think there's any chance he might have been hesitant because, if I remember correctly, his first fight, he got a takedown and then got subbed on the ground? Like, maybe he just wanted to do the
by Tokoro. I mean, that's different. I mean, this is Kubo.
Well, yeah, but still, if that's how your first fight went, you have fair reason to be hesitant the second time around, no matter who you're facing.
Well, is he going to be hesitant forever?
Maybe. If you're not that well trained in grappling, maybe, yeah.
Well, here's the Charles, you brought up a good point that him coming out worse as a winner because let's see, this fight was at 145, but I'm assuming that they're going to fight at one. I'm probably Ota. You think they're gonna have him at 145? I can't see him being at 145 in his Rizin tenure.
I don't know what his wrestling weight was
because the Tokoro fight was at 135, if I'm correctly.
If he can make a lighter weight, then yeah, that's the case. But I mean, it just seemed weird. Like, this was a clearly set up match for a two-pronged approach by Rizin. We have the YouTube following. Both Ota and Kubo have YouTube channels, and Kubo we can promote the insane stuff about his wife. Check. And then this is a fight where Ota, who lost his debut, is going to be able to get his first win and should look fairly dominant because his opponent should not be able to stop the takedown, which proved to be the case. And Ota showed no killer instinct on the ground, which was strange to me. So I just would like to see more aggression. I know this is only his second fight. I may be being too harsh, but I would have liked to have seen, because also after the fight, he made it sound like it was his game plan to fight like this.
No, he said this in the pre-fight press conference. He said I'm just going to take him down. That is what the trans.
I just the way I see it, and I don't mean to cut you guys off. Just the way I see it is that his goal was don't go 0-2, because in my mind personally, if he were to lose this fight, I don't think we would be seeing him again in Rizin.
Oh no, I think he's an Olympic guy. Sakakibara. Listen,
I just think that if a guy goes 0-2, it's hard to market them as watch them in MMA. It's like, well, no, if you're horrible at MMA, well, let me just see you wrestle instead.
But I just killer instinct. I need the fighters to be able to. You're in a dominant position for 99% of the fight, and I think Kubo was surprised the fight was still going on. To be honest, he was at certain points.
Kubo didn't even look like he even took that much damage. I think he looked like he had just been through a jog after during the post-fight press.
He had some minor swelling on his face, but I mean, yeah, I expected near the end of the rounds where there was no risk of submission for Ota to kind of just open up a little bit, and it didn't really seem to happen.
So what? So then, what do you do with Ota next, Charles? What would you do?
Big question, because I mean,
I don't know what to do. I like because
this is kind of like Sidario territory, where it's like, yeah, he won an MMA fight, but he didn't beat an MMA fighter. So do you have to put him against like an actual MMA fighter now, or do you keep him in these kind of like marquee circus style fights?
I'm assuming that he wants to actually like get some competition. I don't know against Sudo.
In a way, Andrew, Ota did say he wanted to face serious competition. He said, obviously, that he's the reason why Gable Stevenson went to go to the WWE. But in a way, those two were two different weight classes ahead of one another. But
very different weight
still,
classes.
I do think that Shinobu Ota wants to fight more serious competition, as in to get away from the freak shows and the weird entrances. Not to say that Sarakubo's entrance was weird. I mean, it was. Let's be real. But still, it's going to be a matter of time before Shinobu Ota fights somebody in his weight class, for one, that actually can put on a decent fight, much like the first fight he had with Tokoro. And for two, give him something that he can fall back on instead of, all this freak show shit.
I just don't.
He's in a tough spot though, because he's making his debut in Japan's #1 promotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it would almost be better like if he was in deeper pancrase and was getting some like, what do they call those boxing fights?
Gimme fights.
Yeah.
What?
Tune-up.
Yeah, like some tune-ups, or like just getting experience in the ring. Because I mean, it's got to be overwhelming to be like, oh, your first fight's in Saitama Super Arena, Tokyo Dome, those kinds of things.
Well, I think that could be why his fight was so mediocre, is just because there's so much pressure, and it's like, well, yeah. He's probably not even thinking about the killer instinct stuff. He's probably just thinking about, geez, I need to win a fight,
Oh, but here's the thing: against a competition, other competition, they're not gonna fall. Like you can get away with that, Kubo, but you can't like. Let's
That's
see.
my point.
Like
this fight tells us nothing about him. This fight tells us that you can take down a kickboxer.
Exactly. So like I don't know, like if you put him up against let's see, another 135. If you put him up against Imanari, I think Imanari rips his leg off. If you put him against Kasugai, I think Kasugai is smart. Oh. That's the problem. Is I'm just trying to think of fights that like who would you put him up against that like won't risk him losing? It's at this point like I don't know. If Tokoro can submit him so easily, I'm just thinking like it's clear that his like MMA.
What weight division was Arsen Yamamoto in?
I think like it was like 135, 125.
That's the fight I want. Make Ota versus Yamamoto.
Okay, that's interesting. I like that. I like that. I mean, because I'm assuming. Well, here's the thing: you don't have to worry about the submission because Ersan ain't submitting anybody. That's but
they both have similar backgrounds. Ersan's probably the better striker, and I would just be interested to see what happens with that fight. I think it's a fight Ota should be able to win.
So y'all basically say that a fight between Shinobu Ota and Ersan Batman Yamamoto would make sense?
Well, it's highly marketable because he's an Olympian himself. Yamamoto comes from a famous family. I think that MMA experience-wise, they're relatively similar. And I think it gives Ota an opponent that he can beat without having to risk about submissions and things like that.
I think, especially the submission, I think that's a very interesting fight. Actually, just want to read the chat. Code Mayday says that Rizin keeps feeding these cross-sport athletes into the wood chipper. It's so true. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like in Fargo when they're putting the bodies in the wood chipper at the end. It's really like that.
When Kubo walked out during the press conference, I just had like flashbacks of like when I think Vanderlei Silva at one point in his career when he was like 30 fights in, fought some guy in Japan making his pro debut. I was just like, this seems about right.
So Jack, would you do the same thing? Put him up against someone like Ersan, or do you have somebody? Would you put somebody else against him?
I think that the issue is that the issue with bringing anyone in at this high level, making their MMA debut, is that you can't accelerate. Like, if you keep progressing their competition, there's eventually going to become some crazy, leap in skill level that they're facing, and they're just going to lose to someone. I mean, we saw it with Sudario that, they gave him guys that he could beat, and then the second they gave him the slightest step up, which was an MMA fighter, he lost. And that's just the issue. Is that the issue here is that if you debut someone on a big stage, the competition is too high, but also somebody of that notoriety isn't going to fight at the regional level because you just can't. You can't. They're not going to do that.
No, not necessarily. I disagree with that. I think that's. I think I'm guessing most prospective fighters would want to, or at least a smart coach or manager would do that. Would tell
but
you.
if I'm an Olympian and I want to make money, I'm not gonna go fight on like a Shudo card. If my options are Shudo and Rizin, I'm gonna fight on a Rizin.
That's what Daniel Cormier did. Daniel Cormier didn't immediately get into the Strikeforce tournament.
Hit my cap to Daniel Cormier.
But I think the tough situation, though, I think what Jack's trying to get at is like it's difficult when both the promotion and the fighter have like a vested interest in him winning.
No, absolutely, yeah. I know, I'm agreeing. And that's the problem that Rizin has.
At the same time, the promotion has the contradiction of like we're supposed to be the best fighters in the country, but then all of a sudden they have to start bringing up like lower level talent just to feed this one fighter.
You can't promote if you're gonna properly build someone, you're gonna give them like 8 low level fights. But if you're Rizin, you're not going to book someone like an Ota 8 times against low level fights because people are just gonna go, you know what? I don't care anymore.
I don't think that's
That's why you need the Yamamoto fight, because the marketing angle, you need to find people that you can, because they need to get the return on their investment, which is like you need to get him against people that will create interest, but are also even leveled matches where he can get better in the ring. That was what I was always so critical about Sidario about. Was Sidario was like, give me better opponents. And I'm like, you idiot! Like, you don't want better level yet. You're not that high level yet. Like, you need to be brought up slowly. Like, sumo isn't a martial art. Like, you need to learn how to fight, and that's what they're trying to give you time to do.
But it's also kind of Rizin's fault because you're right. Okay, so his first fight was against Tokoro, and like you find a guy who's ready. How many fights was that? 40, 45 fights into his career, and now that's a first person, and he submitted almost all of them by armbar, and same thing. Also, though. Happens.
That might just be though because Rizin and the guy that creates the Rizin VTRs loves Tokoro.
Right. Tokoro and his porn collection.
Yes, they have to bring it up every time.
Rizin kind of sets himself up for this. Not like you make your. I personally have no. If I'm a coach or manager, I'm going to tell my Olympic silver medalist from the Rio de Janeiro Olympics fighter that listen, we can't throw you to the wolves. Now, I know Japanese MMA is a little bit different. You've had fighters who lost their first 3 fights or 2 fights, and they still go on to have a long career. But if, I'm coming this from a Western perspective that, a lot of fighters who lose their first, second fights, never hear from them ever again here. So.
Like Weili Zhang.
Yeah, exactly. Weili Zhang. Oh, yeah. Whatever happened to her? Whatever happened to Weili Zhang?
That's Chris Cyborg.
That's a joke.
Chris Cyborg. Her. So, okay, but now here's a bigger question.
I'll just be a dick and keep pointing out outliers to disprove your point.
But still, we can understand. I mean, Andrew and I can basically understand from this. When it comes down to most people who are 2 fights into their career, if they end up taking 2 losses, we don't hear from them again. It's the fact that, how do you get somebody who is, 2 fights into their MMA career or their combat sports career to continue to want to keep fighting?
Oh, it's not that. It's just that promotions won't book somebody here. In Japan, it's obviously different. Wasn't it Sheehan or is it Kuya Ito? One of them who lost their first 5 fights, and then I think it was Sheehan. And so it happens in Japan. It's the different structure in Japan. But speaking of losses, I just want to know, Kubo, what's next for him?
Bring him back.
CJ.
Bring him back.
Who would you bring him back against? And kickboxing or MMA?
I want mixed rules.
Okay. Or the mixed rules.
New Year's Eve card?
I want Kubo. I want full spectacle. I don't want Kubo to be in any fight that can be deemed legitimate. I want him only in spectacle fights. do mixed rules, have Kikuno come out of retirement and fight him in a mixed rule opening round kickboxing, second round MMA.
You know what? How about giving Jie Natsu Nagashima, because he's been getting a lot of traction lately.
He retired yesterday.
Huh?
He retired yesterday.
That's funny.
Damn.
I have a crazy fight in mind, and I'm curious.
Like literally yesterday. I don't credit you for not knowing. I think it was several hours ago.
I have a crazy fight in mind, and if you could do it mixed rules. It just would be so bonkers to make Ren Hiramoto versus Kubo.
Is Ren
I mean,
significantly smaller than him?
Same weight class as Kubo?
They fought at 140. This fight was done at 145.
Okay.
I don't know who's the smaller one though. But like just because of the K1 thing, I don't think you have to worry about the submission thing. Make it mixed rule. I think that if you want to talk about a spectacle fight, I think, and plus, Hiramoto, is just gonna just talk shit the entire time. He'll be able to hype. I just think that's a very interesting fight if they were to book it, especially mixed rules.
I demand that there be some sort of like wife angle as well. So I need a fighter with like a wife that can be involved as well.
Oh damn!
Or a
So
girlfriend.
it's too bad that Ishii retired. We could have had something, with the whole wife thing.
I want mixed rules bout with Yachi. This is what I want now. Because Yachi's girlfriend is a famous Japanese actress. And I want the first round to be kickboxing, the second round to be MMA. And I want the wives to be staring at each other the entire time.
They got to have the picture-in-picture, with the wives screaming,
Exactly.
Jack.
What about Kizaemon Saiga?
Oh yeah, Saiga. Saiga has a very famous fight, but the problem is he's too advanced of an MMA fighter. I think.
No wait, who's the pro wrestler that fought Maha? Whose wife was crying rising girl? Get him.
What the? Oh God! I remember that. Oh,
he's an old pro wrestler that fought Maha in Rising. And his wife used to date Noguera and was the woman crying during the Noguera Fedor match. Her name is yes. That is the level of freak show I want. Get like the 50-year-old pro wrestler to come out and fight Kubo. That's what I want.
I'm about to say Wataru Inoue. I knew it was Wataru something, but it was Wataru Sakura.
The fight that was built completely by his famous wife. Like she was at the press conferences. She was at everything. That's what I want.
Jack, what would you do for Kubo?
Bring him back. I mean, you would be. Does he fit into exactly the type of person that Rizin loved to have? Absolutely. It would be a great mistake to not bring him back. As for who you bring him up against, I have zero clue. I mean, anyone that allows him to not get absolutely mauled. When you guys mentioned having his wife as like a picture-in-picture type thing. They didn't show her picture-in-picture during the fight on the English broadcast, at least. But every time they cut to her, like in between rounds, it seemed like she was having the worst time of her entire life, like just living and dying off of every single moment in this fight.
That's also how you know the gimmick is a gimmick, because she like seemed legitimately concerned for her husband during the fight. Now, see, what I want is a picture-in-picture in the picture of her. To be her not watching the fight, to be like her completely uninterested, like have her like eating a meal, like drinking something, like playing on her phone.
What, being completely antisocial?
No, just like indifferent to the fight in general, just like not paying attention about it, like waving to the fans, things like that.
By the way, Cold Mayday said that Kizaemon Saiga, unfortunately, that fight wouldn't happen because, for one, he's in K1, and two,
divorced.
He's divorced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He divorced his super famous wealthy wife because he's not very smart.
That sucks. Sucks even more that Jie Natsu's retired, right?
Yeah, get Eddie Alvarez out there, have his wife screaming in the crowd. Just anyone with an active wife is what I want.
Oh my God! If Eddie Alvarez versus Yuta Kubo would be like, oh my God, that would be I just would love to see that because it would be so horrific. But we would have the wife angle. You could definitely the VTRs for that would be about both of their wives being absolutely crazy.
Yeah, but you can't get Eddie Alvarez because he's in that damn one championship.
But I'm not confused. I don't know who
Random side note: as long as we're going along like fighters' wives, my favorite MMA fighter wife moment, obscure, was Gilbert Melendez. I think after a fight, walking back to the locker room, and some fan like leans over the balcony and yells at him, and his wife punched the guy right in the face. It's got to be the best.
Well, what show? Do you remember what show this was?
No, it was before she made her pro debut, so people didn't realize that she was a badass herself.
Oh, that's it. Oh, I want to see. I want to find that. I want to find that.
Find it.
That had to be that had to be for Dream Den in that case, probably, right?
Oh, you just look up Gilbert Melendez, wife punches fan. It was in one of his UFC fights.
Oh, it was UFC. I thought you were talking about Dream.
No. It was in the Japanese fans aren't like leaning over and openly booing people.
I was about to say unless they're like drunk on whiskey or something.
That would have also been long-haired Melendez with his majestic mane that went down so far now. It was definitely like a drunk American fan.
I see. Now, unfortunately, we only got time for a little bit of banter to talk about these last two fights. So
Chris, in fairness, we'll probably talk longer than the actual fight start of how long the fight went.
But due to time constraints, let's keep this short and simple like the fight was.
Yeah, so
Samurai Maruyama knocking out Chihiro Suzuki in 20 seconds. Thoughts? Andrew, go.
Sorry, Charles, go ahead. You were there live. Tell us.
This is what happens in an MMA fight when you run at a guy throwing haymakers is you get caught coming in and the fight's over. And my thing about this fight is this is why I love the ring. You have to see a really cool angle of a guy getting knocked out as he went down and continue to get punched.
Well, listen, also during the press conference, I think it was Suzuki who said, I want this fight to be like Don Fry Takayama. That was a bad prophecy. That was if you want to talk about.
Also, if you go back to that fight was like hockey punches. That wasn't haymakers.
Yes. Yeah. Well, listen, I don't fault either fighter for fault going to. Oh, before we talk about the fight, can we talk about Samurai Sword versus Buster Sword and how awesome it was that they came out with dueling swords?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I mean, because we have been, and also Suzuki came out with it was like an anime or video game villain dress up thing. It was like a long red robe type thing.
This fight was like a shot of adrenaline that this event needed. And the only thing that would have made it better is if this fight had happened like as the 6th or 7th fight.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
To break up the decisions a little bit, but a welcome change of strategy for the fight card.
So
the one thing I liked about this fight being on so early is that I tweeted out screenshots of the swords, and the people who were still awake over in the US were like, "Oh, Rizin's doing a Rizin thing again." Like that was sort of their reaction. Like, "Oh yeah, of course." This is what we see from the event: is someone carrying a 7-foot sword.
And that was a Buster sword, right? I thought that was a Buster sword.
Wasn't it like back in the Ridden back in one of the early Risings where they had like the famous voice actors come out dressed like a knight, and like Ren Nakai came out with wings and a giant sword. So definitely is Rising thing to have the swords involved.
Especially because we've been bereft of like Rizin, grand entrances. These stood out among besides Sarah Cooper singing, obviously, but this felt like, and at least I like that they did that. I don't know if that was their own thing that they decided. Soji always comes out with the samurai sword. That's why it's called samurai.
It's their own thing. I mean, they're doing their own thing.
Well, credit to Suzuki. He's like, he comes out with a samurai sword. What's bigger than a samurai sword? A fucking Buster sword from Final Fantasy VII or whatever he was trying to get it from. Soji was just fucking awesome. Especially credit to him. He lost his last 2 fights, and got finished in both of them. And with this fight, talk about great comebacks. So what do you think of that? This fight, Jack? for the 20 seconds that it lasted?
Well, what's funny is I think my feed was a little behind some people's because I remember my fight started and then I saw a chat of people who were watching it and they were just all like, "Oh my God, like it's over," and I didn't know what to believe, and I thought the finish was surprising. And when you watch the replay, I think I might be wrong about this, but I think what happened is, unfortunately for Suzuki, I think he went down to his knee because he lost his balance during like a wild flurry. I don't think he got knocked down, but then when he was down on one knee, he got absolutely whammed with a left hook that just put him out immediately. But I think him going down to a knee was just a balance thing.
Well, Shoji just looked like he was throwing bombs. So if he fell, if he fell,
Well,
possible, but it just looked like everything that he looked like Shoji was just throwing.
Well,
like
either way, when he went down
the
to
first
that
one
knee,
did knock him out. Like the 3 follow-up punches definitely
yeah,
put him
that's
out.
true. Yeah.
I gotta say, I know so far there's no announced alternate or reserve fighter for this.
There are announced alternates, I believe. I think the fights on the landmark card have been announced as the alternates.
I was like, are they gonna do that? Are they gonna try maybe risk, like they did with the last show?
Which tells me that what's probably going to happen is the winner of the Imanari fight and the winner of the Shuto Watanabe fight will also fight each other on the New Year's Eve card, and they will be the alternate bout.
I'm so upset to hear that because I was like, if they don't have an alternate fighter, I was like, put Shoji in there. Like, just have him as a backup, have him in the back, have him make weight just in case. Because other than Kai, he hasn't fought any of the other 3. I don't think the other 3 fighters. So I felt like, man, that kind of kills my whole thing. What to do with him next?
Well, I think they're obviously promoting him because on social media, I noticed that Panshan Rina is fishing with Kai and Shoji right now, which to me, it's not 100%, but just means that they're probably shooting that Rising YouTube show, kind of like when Kyoji and Ayaka Hamazaki went fishing. And so that tells me that Shoji is one of the people that they're interested in promoting. So I think he has a bright future still with the promotion, even at the advanced state of his career.
Of course he does. I mean, how bright of a future do you think you're going to have after getting a 20-second knockout? And speaking of, you just mentioned Panchan Rina. She got the win in the first ever Rizin women's kickboxing bout against Momo Commando Colo.
Yes.
But before we move on to that fight, Jack, what would you do with Shoji next? Do you think that this warrants him getting another fight sometime down the line with Rizin?
I mean, of course, I don't know who to put him up against, but of course, yeah, bring him back. He would work as a good gatekeeper, and on this show, he gate kept.
He's also popular.
Oh yeah.
Also, listen, I think minus his loss, a fighter like him is he's either going to be killed or kill, and I like that. And you don't know it's if you when they say a puncher's chance, he truly is a puncher's chance. Listen, is he going to probably the one that goes down? Yeah, probably. So, but what I think you said it best, Jack. You need a fighter like that. Rizin, especially now, Rizin is in a position where they're going to need people to either lose or just a body on the card. I think Shoji is perfect for that because if you look at his record, he's knocked out most of his opponents. He's also been knocked out or been submitted. But regardless, a fighter like that is, I'm sure Charles, when he's been on deep shows, he's usually like top of the card, right?
Yeah, and he's very popular. People like him. There's a joke about him now that they say that he follows the Asakura brothers around because he seems to pop up in their videos all the time. But he's popular.
That's nice, especially after the fight they had with Asakura. That was nice of them to have him in his video and their videos. But now we have the flip side. Chihiro Suzuki. What would you do with that gentleman next, CJ?
Bring him back. The guy goes for it. He tries to knock people out in the first round, and if his gimmick is going to be the next full swing and try to go for knockouts in the first round all the time, I'm willing to watch him try to do that.
But question: kickboxing or MMA? Because don't forget, he's also a kickboxer.
Both.
So you kind of read my mind. I was gonna say put them up against Full Swing for the next fight. They're both
I'd love
weight.
it.
They're both the same weight class. They both
Same strategy.
fully swing. They both lost.
Plus, if you do that battle, Full Swing is going to come out with his baseball bat, and Suzuki's going to come out with a bigger baseball bat.
Exactly. Jack, what would you do with Suzuki next?
I wouldn't bring him back. I mean,
really?
I mean,
hater.
like,
such a hater.
I'm not a hater, and like the thing is like I still sort of think his loss was unlucky, but like I don't know. To me it's just like I don't really know why he was on this card to start with, like what the angle necessarily was, and I don't know if he has a following. I'm not saying no. Let me just say this. I'm not saying no forever. I'm just saying come back soon.
So here's the thing.
Behind the scenes, he going into the next fight as well. He works with Knockout, and that's where Panchan Rina comes from. And so there is a likelihood that as part of Panchan's, I mean, I don't know if Panchan Rina is probably likely still under contract with Knockout and is kind of leased to Rising. And so maybe as part of that deal, Knockout wants more of their fighters to be part of Rising shows. Kind of like how shoot boxing will have random people appear and you're just like, oh, that must be part of the Rina deal that they have to put some other shoot boxing fighters on the card.
And lots of Rise guys too.
Yeah, so a lot of these promotions, like, well, if you're going to take our popular people, we want you to put some of our other people on their card and get the rub on them as well.
Just also continue. So he's 5-3 as an MMA fighter, and he's only 22, by the way. Suzuki's only 22, and if you look at his Tapology, he has like a million kickboxing fights. So, I mean, I was thinking that Rizin wanted him to get the win in this because they wanted to have a showcase for another potential long-term.
I want him to win.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think so. I hard disagree with you, Jack. Don't bring him back.
But
I guess
you understand that he's so young that he can afford to not come back for a year.
Jack's over there trying to be rational, up there on his yachi stool, talking down to us.
I'm actually on a stool too. But
I see what you're saying. I did.
I say let him come back to Rising. Let's have his next fight be a kickboxing bout.
Who would you? How about against like Cozy? Is that too high level?
I think it's perfect. I think Koji needs a fight like that, and that fight will tell us a lot about Koji.
And it also tells us a lot about Suzuki as well.
Exactly.
You got any plans for Suzuki?
But if you think
Chris?
about it, I think that Shoji is just a certified monster. I think that he should be fighting on the next Rising pay-per-view, the Rising 31 card next month, immediately off of the back of that 20-second knockout. As far as Chihiro Suzuki goes, well, maybe it would be best for him to get into kickboxing, but I don't see him leaving MMA for the time being either. Now, on to the Panchan Rina versus Momoko Mandokoro fight. Obviously, this was the fight that pretty much started the show off, the fight that made everybody's mouth water. It was 3 3-minute rounds. Panchan Rina did come in. I mean, Panchan Rina Okamoto, if we're using her actual last name, did get the win. But when you see the fact that Panchan Rina is getting successful, what about Momoko Mandokoro? What do you think is going to happen with her after this fight?
Well, forgive me. I fucked up the graphic, and somehow I have their legs.
It's okay. It's okay.
We get it. You're a perv. You're a perv. We get it.
We're all degenerates here.
We're talking about the VTR, how they highlighted Rina's whatever that was. Was that fetish videos or something?
No, she was a I don't know how to translate it. She was an idol.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, she was not. This is only like Ring Nakai level of.
No. She was. I think
fans.
she was like a model that would take like bikini pictures and stuff like that.
Okay,
but
gotcha.
She doesn't really talk about it that much, but promoters do. I thought this fight, to be honest, Momoko is kind of a hand-selected opponent for Panchan Rina. I mean, she's significantly shorter. and Pancharmina cuts down to 46, and Momoko walks around at 46. And I thought that Rising obviously wanted her to win this fight, and I think they were hoping for a finish. But the problem is that Rise also has this problem, is that these women at 46 kilometers, that's ridiculous, 46 kilograms.
40 kilograms or 103 pounds.
Yeah, they generally don't have knockout power. And if they do, it's not one punch knockout power. Now you're going to have exceptions, like Rena has knockout power, but that's because she's a body puncher. She targets the body a lot and gets knockouts that way. And I think the concern, and so as part of that, in Rise, they've actually introduced smaller gloves at the last event because they're trying to increase the number of finishes.
Also, just hold on, just quickly, no spoilers. I'm still watching that 10-hour card. I'm still getting through that 10-hour card.
So, but I think the issue with Pancharmina is if she sticks with kickboxing, which she is not even thinking about MMA, so we have to assume that she will. The issue is, do people want to watch her fight a bunch of decisions? Or does she need to somehow start getting finishes to generate more interest? She's also, opponent-wise, she's been calling out Hinata Terayama, who trains with Tenshin Nasukawa and is a Rise champion, but Rise is like not having it. They're like, if you want to fight her, come to Rise. And Terayama, as I've said, which I thought was hilarious, I've said it many times, doesn't want to fight on New Year's Eve card because she likes the TV show Journeys Live and wants to watch TV instead of fight on New Year's Eve.
So they kept on showing Reina in the audience. By the way, I'm not gonna. The comments I was reading, through social media, and just there's a lot of comments about Reina's weight, and I think the one comment I saw was
that's I think is so stupid about that. It's like we know these people are athletes, right? Like they can lose the weight. Like it's not like
were people calling Reina fat?
The one comment I saw was that she looks more like King Reina now. That's not
nice.
It's not nice. What I don't understand is, like, do people not understand that these athletes, they fluctuate in like weight? Like they're not, like, Reina's not always walking around at like 110 pounds. Like,
yeah, that's kind of crazy. I
don't know what the Japanese were saying, but like, I don't know if that's what I'm reading in English. It might have been worse in some from the Japanese side because.
I think a lot of people, she was sitting in a very strange position.
She was wearing a dress that was like.
Yeah, she was like arching back, which would push your stomach forward. She was like stretching her legs back and arching back. But Reina's a professional athlete, and she weighs her fight weight probably for an hour during her fight camp. So I don't know what people are talking about.
If there's one thing I thought was funny is that they cut to her maybe 8 times during the fight, and it was almost comedic how they eventually started cutting to her, and her expression on her face was like, "Wait, they're showing me again? Like, I can't look at the camera again." Like, I just waved to it.
The best was the UFC with Takanori Gomi and him just like getting angry at the camera. But Pancharmina, obviously, her big thing is her sex appeal, and that factor. She's going to be what looks like in a Rising video. She collaborates with Asakura Kai. My number one concern, though, is the lack of finishes, and I think people will get tired. She's not Reina. For people criticize Reina in Japan for being like, oh, she leans in her looks too much. But that aside, Reina finishes people, even in her kickboxing fights, which I think is the big difference between the two.
Also, I want to also point out about the height of Momoko.
14 centimeters.
She was
14 centimeters. Is huge.
She was shorter than the ring turnbuckle. I think she's
She's 4'9", I believe.
Yeah, she's 4'9", and when she stood against the corner turnbuckle was actually taller than her. I could not believe legit like that she was that short. And looking next to Reina.
So basically what you're saying is those 5-foot turnbuckle pads are taller than her?
Yeah, yes.
And before the fight, Momoko even said, like, I'm not afraid of Pancharmina's punches, which was clear in the fight. Like, she was not worried about getting hurt by her at all, which I think for a fight to be exciting, to me at least, there has to be the thought that this fight could be over at any second. And when you remove that factor, the fight starts to lose a lot of interest to me.
Also, if there's one thing I thought was interesting about the fight, it's that, this was supposed to be a showcase for Reina, and I guess in the end it still was. But this, near the end, I think it was a pretty close fight, in my opinion, and it became a real scrap where both of them were taking damage in it. So I think that what intrigued me about this fight was that it was just clearly way closer than they wanted. And for Rena, who was supposed to be putting on putting out a statement, this was way too close for comfort for her.
Oh yeah.
I thought Rise sent over a fighter. I mean, I'm not disparaging Momoko. I actually like Momoko a lot, but they sent over a fighter I think was on a 3-fight losing streak who isn't really a contender in Rise, and she made a very close competitive fight with Panchanrina, despite the weight advantage, despite the height advantage. Momoko was able to hit her. She was able to get in and frustrate her, and so I think a lot of those kind of are little, I wouldn't say red flags, I'll say yellow flags about Panchanrina's, because Panchanrina comes from a somewhat obscure kickboxing promotion. She's not fighting the top people in that promotion aside from Sasori, so it'll be interesting.
I watched a fight with Sasori, and I noticed that Reina does tend to get punched a lot, particularly down the middle.
And she's smaller. She's significantly smaller than Reina. This is going to be confusing. Rena is smaller than Reina, but because I think Reina weighs 46 and Reina cut down to 49. But people that want to have that tooth fight, I think it'd be very obvious that the bigger Reina would just destroy Reina. So I don't think that fight's ever going to happen.
That's what I mean. They kept on showing Reina. I'm assuming that's like, oh, that's why they keep on showing her, because hey,
I think they're trying to associate the two. I think they're trying to be like, when Reina retires, this is the new Reina.
Oh, you don't think they're actually going to do Reina versus Reina?
No, because I mean, Reina is so much bigger than her. I think Reina would hurt her.
So what?
In a way, and I think Colt Mayday kind of put this out. Panchanrina is probably the next. I mean, Panchanrina Okamoto is the next Reina Kubota. They keep her in kickboxing. I don't think that's going to happen.
I guess the only issue is though is, do you think Rise is going to continue on with this Rise with the women's kickboxing after this, Charles? Does it seem like
they will? She sold a ton of tickets.
Oh yes.
Watch her social media. She sold a ton of tickets. She'll be back. I'm just wondering, is it sustainable? Is my thought process.
And also, what about the competition though? Is this a case where like, kind of like where everybody?
Well, if Rise refuses to share their fighters, then it dies. Because all of the popular female kickboxers fight for either Rise or K1, and K1's not going to share fighters with Rising.
Mm-hmm.
Of course they're not. They're stingy as hell.
Is there any
the fun fight for this to make, like the dream fight right now? K1 has Mio, and Mio was Rena's training partner, who's pretty popular. But I mean, she's in K1, so they pretty much have to depend on Rise. And if Rise is like, hell no, we're not giving you our popular fighters for your events, then there's a problem.
I don't see why not. They always let Taiju and others, Kenshin obviously come by as well. I don't see why they wouldn't do it with the women in this case, unless.
My thought process would be it's because Rising has less to offer in women's kickboxing. There's like not a lot of give and take. It'd just be take.
Isn't Rise also like really trying hard to build their roster of women right now? I mean, to me, it makes sense if they really wanted to protect them, because they're devoting full cards to them. There's clearly an amount of interest from the promotion.
They also just had a women's tournament at what was it, 49 kilos, 50 kilos?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're obviously focusing on it, and they're trying to develop the market. And I think their whole thought process is, we get a ton of viewers on Abima TV because our events all stream on Abima. What do you offer us in women's kickboxing besides one fighter? Because also Rise's kickbox, I mean, Terayama is probably more popular than Panchanrina.
I was going to say, so if they were to do Terayama, which would be the most popular fight you could do between two, they would have to do it on a Rise card, is what you're saying?
That's what Rise is saying.
Oh, that's why Rise is. Okay. Didn't Momoka defeat Terayama?
No.
Or was it the other way around?
Momoka defeated Riri Nasukawa.
That was okay.
Nasukawa's the sister.
Okay. I'll go with this. Do you think so that was probably at a different weight class than Riri Nasukawa, right?
It's probably similar. I think Riri Nasukawa could fight Rina Okamoto, and I think would probably win.
You really think that Riri would beat Rina? Riri would beat Rina?
Yeah, I saw a Riri fight where she knocked out like an old soccer mom. So yeah, I think Riri would win.
So yeah, Jack, would you like to see this women's kickboxing thing continue to happen in Rizin, regardless of weight class?
Well, I'll say this. I think that Rena, for one, she's extremely popular. She, I think what's interesting about her fight is that, I mean, I thought this fight was pretty close, and I think people after seeing this would probably, even though it was close, want to see her back because of that. Because if you can put on close fights, people want to see you. I think she has sort of like a star power about her. She has that charisma, and I think it would be cool to see her. Obviously, the issue is who are you going to put her against? You need the Rise cooperation. Everyone else, Rena has either faced or is in K1. So it's like, what are you going to do?
Also, I mean, the last time women's kickboxing was really popular in Japan was with Erika Kamimura, who works at Rise now. And that's because she knocked everybody out. And I think, I hate to harp on it, but I think she needs to find a way to knock people out.
So you think that could hold her back as well?
Ever put on the gloves again?
I'm sorry?
Do you think that she'll ever put on the gloves and fight again?
Panchan Rina? Or Erika?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but Erika, I mean, she said she was sick. She has some medical condition where she's not able to.
That sucks, and we all hope the she has
like one of her students she's training all the time, and she does commentary, and she's actually a hilarious commentator. So I would recommend people watch if they speak Japanese.
Well, also, Charles, what about Deep has their random kickboxing thing that I feel like pops up just randomly. Like I'll forget it happened
once every 5 years. It's like leap year. Oh yeah, Deep does kickboxing.
Yeah, they do deep kick, and even more random is when they do the deep kick, deep jewels version of it. Do you know of anybody that might be potential? Anybody who you would be like, yeah, that might be a good fight to make against Panchan?
So I mean, the obvious fight to make would be the Teriyama fight.
Mm-hmm.
And Deep Jewels, they don't have like a division. They just borrow fighters from other, Momoka fought for Deep Kick a lot. And so they just borrowed fighters from other promotions that were looking for a fight. There's fights like there's this girl in Rise in Ayaka. There's a Rina Kobayashi.
Mm-hmm.
So any of these rising girls, actually a fun fight to make. Okay, here's the fight to make to me. There's a girl named Saya Ito who has been fighting since she was 5. She fought Tenshin Nasukawa when she was a kid. And she has like 5 or 6 Muay Thai championships. And I think she fought like close to 90 amateur fights before she turned 15. She's the fight because she's not she fought in Rise, but she's not associated with Rise. She's independent. And I think she would be a very high profile fighter for Panchan Rina. And they weigh the same.
Oh, Kobe Day, he says shoot boxing has some women as well, like Mizaki as well.
Oh, Misaki?
Yeah.
Misaki's openly stated she wants to fight Rena. So I think she's working towards being Rena's last fight.
Reina. You're talking about. Yeah. Oh, okay.
As in Kubota, not Miura.
Okay. Right. Her whole angle now is she wants to put some wins together and be Rena's last shoot boxing fight.
Oh, okay, gotcha. What about if things open up? You think that you think Rise would be willing to get anybody from Thailand?
That's what they would do. The total strategy would be to bring over South Koreans. And
have a rematch Siwoo Park. Rematch Siwoo Park again?
Possible, but I mean, I think Siwoo Park's a better MMA fighter than she was a kickboxer.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. Do you what is the likelihood? Do you think that she's going to go into MMA if there's like if she just feels like that if she just can't find any compatible competition? Do you just see her just being like, what?
Unlike Momoka, who was like, I would love to do it. I think Panchan Rina is kind of not interested in it. I mean, she's only been kickboxing for a couple of years, so she's very new to the sport. And I think she understands that kickboxing is very different from MMA. And she hasn't expressed any interest in it. Well, that being said, I once interviewed Rina, who said she would never do an MMA match. So people can change.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when the rising Brinks truck backs up to your house and starts unloading bags of money.
How about Panchan Rina versus Sarah Kubo?
Oh my god! In an idol off.
Andrew Benjamin, let's not bring that shit into existence.
Would that be like one of those? Was that like back in the Attitude era of wrestling when they had like the girls do talent shows and stuff like that?
Yes. It was also during the ruthless aggression era too, but let's not bring that shit into it.
What about Momika? I know she's on a really on a losing streak right now. Did she say she's going to, did she say the whole thing about I'm gonna make my comeback or whatever? What do you think?
About this fight, I think she said she was nervous. I don't think she'd ever fought in front of that many people before. The fight was relatively last minute. I mean, she was told that she had the fight the day before the press conference. And I think she will just go back to Rise and she's very popular. People in the kickboxing community, within the kickboxing community, all the people over at Rise like her. She puts on exciting fights, as you saw. Even in the fights that she loses, she never stops coming forward. She's always going for it. And I think she'll just go back to Rise and have a good time there.
Mm-hmm. And maybe she can eventually make her way to Deep Jewels for her.
She does. She fought for Deep Kick a couple I think earlier last year or this year.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe if Deep Jewels, what is it? She'd be probably microweights, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, she'd be around the microweight.
Okay, because if she would, she would. Hey, maybe if they need more microwave fighters, they could ask Momika.
You don't realize how much you're in my wheelhouse right now. I'm all about the microweight division. And
one of what is it? Mark Q. Also, he calls it the I forgot what he called it. Was it microweight or he calls it a different name, I think.
Is it called penweight or something?
He called it something different. What they call it in Deep? Do they call it microweight?
They call it microweight, but they used to call it something else. They used to call it flyweight. Like Deep used to have like their own weight. Crazy weight divisions.
Isn't it like eagle weight or something?
No, echo weight.
Mark Hughes calls it something. I forgot. I'm gonna have to ask him because he's mentioned it a number of times when we talked about
Shinashi weight, essentially. I'm all about microweight, and it has a bunch of young fighters that are all like they have like one fighter who's jiu-jitsu based, and it's kind of like old school UFC 1 era. So I would love to see a kickboxer switch over and be part of it.
Hey, you know what? Maybe we could get Rizin to have a microweight division. I don't think that'll ever happen, but that'd be like, imagine just like a microweight division.
One of the microweights is literally being marketed by Deep as this is the smallest fighter we've ever had. So I'm all about it.
Oh my God, that's so fun. Is that what's her name?
Kyoka Chibisai.
Yeah, Chibisai. Yes, yeah. So, listen, I love how Deep promotes her people. I really love it.
We're done talking about the 10 fights. I know, Andrew, you normally do this, but what was your favorite fight? And what was your fight? No, what was your fight of the night? And what was your performance of the night?
Let's start with you, Jack.
Well, performance of the night have to go.
I know, so hard to pick. So many.
I don't think it's hard at all. I think it's actually quite easy. I think Kenta Takizawa takes it. He pulled off the biggest upset of the entire card. He pulled off the only upset of the
almost
card.
No damage.
And he pulled off one of the only finishes of the night. Fight of the night. I think it would have to go to Ota and Kubo. No, I'm just kidding. It would have to go to.
You savage! I thought you were serious for a
kid.
second.
You got a lot to learn.
I think I'd have to go for Asakura and Yamaniya.
I mean, I'm just saying, dude. If you're under 21 and you think that's your favorite fight of the night, then you really need to do a hell of a lot more research before you come up with that opinion, kid.
Charles, same questions to you.
Fight of the night, I'm going Naoki Inoue Kentaro. I thought the third round was awesome, especially when Kentaro started turning things around. Performance of the night, going Sarah Kubo, really rocked my socks off, and I thought it was amazing.
Okay, Andrew, what about you? What's your favorite fight of the night? Because I'm going to close this show out.
Okay. Oh, my God.
Breathe first. Breathe.
I'm just thinking back to that thing. It's so awful and it's so entertaining. It's so many like things.
It's the William Hung of rising entrances.
It wasn't so bad, but like it's the performance of the night. Fuck. Okay. Fight night for me was Yachi. Fight the night was Yachi. Takeda, I love the awesome back and forth. We thought that Yachi, oh God, he's gonna get his arm broken or whatever. No, he made a nice comeback. Hope he fights Kume next. I hope he doesn't fight Souza next, but well, whoever, we'll see what happens. Performance of the night. Listen, it's other than Sarah Kubo. Listen, I love what Takizawa did, but I love my Hail Mary knockouts. I loved what Soji did. It was either going to be kill. He was either going to die or kill the other guy. And this one, he survived. He killed the other guy, and I love it. 20 seconds, beautiful. One of the best knockouts of the year.
Okay, understood. Well, my fight of the night, even though, again, you're going to have to talk to Jay Wolf about how I slept through this entire card. How I slept through the end of this card, but still, my fight of the night was definitely, if I were to say out of the Grand Prix fights, not including the Takizawa Motoya fight, it would have to be Ogi Kubo versus Otsuka. Especially considering the fact that Ogi Kubo's, storybook continues.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the non-Grand Prix fights go, and no, I'm not going to talk about Ota versus Kubo like y'all have beaten to death like a dead horse. I'm going to go ahead and say that it was Yusuke Yachi continuing his trek against Koichi Takeda to become the Rizin lightweight champion of the world. And that's all I say about that.
Good choices. I think overall a good show despite the non-finishes. I think it was better.
One more question we gotta ask.
Yeah.
This fight again featured only 2 knockouts out of 10 fights. 20% of the fights ended. 20% of the fights did not end in a decision. That's bad. What do you think needs to be done better in order to, prevent the decisions from piling up like that?
What do you think, CJ?
How do they stop the decisions from piling up like that?
Put concrete in their gloves.
Never name an event. UFC knockout.
No. Andrew,
wasn't UFC knockout the UFC event that had 0 finishes?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew, I know you're too young to remember Billy Collins versus Louis Resto, so I think I'll give you a pass.
I was cursed that my hometown had to host Crow Cop versus Brendan Schaub. And after that event, the UFC didn't come back to town for like 10 years.
Of course. Obviously, CJ, you're from Indianapolis, Indiana originally, but still, 2 out of 10 fights, 20% of the fights on this card ended in finishes. Do you think that's a sign that Rizin needs to? Do you think that's a sign that fighters fighting Rizin need to up their finishing game?
Well, it's also just interesting because the last card as well had barely any finish as well. Just funny that 2 back-to-back cards. Though the funny thing is that the 2 finishes were like really impactful on the show. Sorry, Charles, go ahead.
Unless you have Scott Coker doing the matchmaking, when you have high-level matches, finishes sometimes don't happen. It's just part of the sport. Unless you're going to book Robbie Lawler against some guy from the Army Navy Depot or something, kind of like back in the old Strike Force days. You really can't guarantee knockouts. So it's just part of the sport. It happens. Unless you have Sakakibara going backstage and cutting someone's Achilles before the fight, drugging people. I don't think you're going to guarantee finishes.
Any thoughts on that, Jack?
No, I don't see it as an issue.
Yeah.
It's not the decision. It's how you get to the decision. There's a difference between.
Also, we had a lot of decisions on this card which were really close competitive fights. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, if you get that, then it's whatever.
I think when you look at it,
unfortunately, the answer is if you want more finishes, do more mismatches. But that's not a fair thing to ask for.
I think we're also when you bring up a fight like Ota and Kubo, the problem is that finish is that it was so uneventful that one guy just happened to just win because he did just a teeny bit more.
That fight wasn't boring to me at all. I was into that fight for some reason.
I think being there was different. Watching on television, that fight felt like it was going on for 3 hours. I thought they were. Okay. I thought it reminded me of when Dan Severn first fought Ken Shamrock. think it was UFC 2 or 3, where
Oh, yeah.
they were just in each other's guard for good. I think that
So,
one they were.
Wasn't that kind of like Ken Shamrock, Hoist Gracie 2, where Ken Shamrock just stayed in his guard and headbutted him?
Exactly. Yeah.
But the only reason why that Dan Severn Ken Shamrock fight was like that was because of the fact that the Maverick John McCain, said that the UFC was like a human cockfighting show.
But
so the rules changed up.
If you get a fight like Takeda, Yachi, or something like that, where it's a great back and forth, I don't mind this decision. But if you get like Ota Kubo, where he's just gonna be in his guard the entire time because he legitimately does not know what to do, or either doesn't know how to get out of his guard, then it's like it's not a fun ride. It's not a fun ride. It's even worse when heavyweights do it. It's even worse when a heavyweight fight happens.
Like the notorious UFC Denver card. Yeah.
Yes, I like that one. That brings us to the end of Rise of 30. This is a time for plugs. So Charles, we'll start with you, and then Jack, you can take over. Charles, tell us what you're doing, where people can reach you, and anything like that that you want them to know.
Okay, you can follow me on Twitter. It's already been mentioned. Website Sogo-Kaku. That means MMA in Japanese. And follow mainly the women's sports. We have an article on Han coming up, and Itsuki. And on Ritu, we interviewed all the fighters from the One Championship Atomweight tournament. So those articles will be up soon. So take a look.
Also, Charles, you never mentioned. I always have to mention it for you.
I do a podcast with Shu Hirata, who is a prominent Japanese manager. He manages Inoue, and he manages Sasaki, which may be part of my bias, but I do love the Inoues, so I always talk about them.
But as we said before, the reason why people should go to your podcast is updates on Ring Nakai. If you love Ring Nakai, listen, it should be called, if you want your doses of what she and her crazy husband are doing, her crazy husband / manager, that is the podcast. And I think you just had one come out recently, like I think this past week or last weekend.
Yeah, we talked about the release of her bookmark. You can see her bookmark tabs on her most recent screenshots and the strange things she follows.
Absolutely gross.
Oh, Lord. But still, y'all can check that out wherever y'all get y'all podcast. Unlike on here with the We Are Rising pod, they're actually on Google Podcasts. So, and also Focus Fights Audio is via Google Podcasts as well. So, yeah. But still, Jack, do you got anything you want to plug, young man? Like anything going down on Knockdown News?
Of course, I got things to plug. There's always things going on. You guys can follow me on Twitter if you want to, of course, at Jack Wannan. That's JackWannan. I have an MMA news site called knockdownnews.com. They're on Twitter at knockdownnews. If you're watching this live, you're probably not going to catch the start of One Championship tomorrow morning, but I'm going to catch it, and you can check live coverage on the site if you want to get some sleep and miss the start of that card, or get a lot of sleep and miss the entire card. Because you would be getting a lot of sleep. You'd be sleeping until like 11:30 a.m. or something like that. So, that's where I do MMA stuff. If you follow me on my other account, my personal account, I also just do articles on other stuff sometimes. So, yeah.
Are you still getting people unfollowing you because you're posting about AEW stuff now?
No, I'm back up now. I'm on the rise again. So we're good.
Did I tell you? See, I told you. Listen, yes, you're gonna lose the MMA fans, but then wrestling fans will discover you. And
I weeded out the fake friends.
Exactly. So, but that's the thing. Wrestling fans don't care if you talk about MMA, but MMA fans care if you talk about pro wrestling. So you can talk about all the MMA you want, and they won't leave. As long as you talk about pro wrestling, they'll stick around.
Jack, I hear the LeBron James of women's MMA is fighting on that ONE FC card.
Oh yes, yeah. Victoria Lee, basically the LeBron James of MMA is competing. And if you're not watching that, then you're kind of out of touch with the sport. So I'm
so confused. So I know. So that's Victoria Lee. And May Yamaguchi is the best ever. So I'm so confused. Like, is it like they give it's like I don't know who the best is anymore because they keep on saying that
ONE FC is One Championship or ONE FC, whatever you want to call them, is full of hyperbole.
Oh, absolutely.
They're basically full.
That is bullshit. Everything they say is literal and true. Victoria Lee is the next Serena Williams / LeBron James / Mike Tyson.
No, I will say that
all I gotta say is when it comes down to ONE FC, look at all the bloody elbow reports that John S. Nash put about them. You'll probably want to think twice about them.
Hey, ONE FC addressed those. They said they're not true.
And they said that they said that the internet's a dangerous place.
Yes.
To be fair, that is true, but maybe not in this case.
Here's the anytime someone just says
those documents we filed with the Singapore government about our tax returns, it's a dangerous place. I wouldn't look through that. I wouldn't look too deep into those.
So confusing.
Anytime someone says like a blanket statement, oh, the internet's a dangerous place, I'm like, which bodies are you hiding in your closet that is making you say that? Because if you said like, oh yeah, pockets of the internet, or you know what, listen, you should have, this, they may have written this, but this is our side. He just blatantly said the internet is a dangerous place. That only
also, the funniest part about those tax returns.
Well, it is true.
They said they had a $400 million profit, but if they looked into it, the $400 million profit was themselves selling themselves something for $400 million and then not paying for it.
I said this best. I think I look forward to the future Netflix documentary on the rise and fall of ONE FC.
Well, the thing I said about the finances being denied or whatever it was is that like if you're going to deny something but then you can't state specifics, there's no point in even listening to that deny. Like,
oh, also the news, it's like they're no longer filing in Singapore. They're like moving to the Cayman Islands where the financial documents are no longer going to be publicly accessible. I'm like, oh, that's a good move.
Listen,
don't pay attention to this. Everything that said there's lying. We're moving though.
We had the whole thing with the Dice team, Charles, which I'm sure you followed, and like when you saw that, you're like, this is not surprising. Listen, down the line, we're gonna hear about like some gigantic extortion thing, and it's gonna involve like 10 countries, and it's gonna like go up to like the highest levels of government. It's all gonna come down eventually.
Yeah. Side note, back to the Dice team, Souza and Koike both gave back all of their Dice team money. They donated it to charity, and Takeda gave it all back. So people are starting to distance themselves wisely.
You know what? That's good for them. It would be even greater if Chatri would suck on Long Don's balls, but that's another story for another day.
That's interesting you bring up, but so is it Dice? Is they still around though? Is like the organization still around, or is it like
so the Dice team's Indonesian Instagram page occasionally likes my posts, but that's the only activity I've seen.
I think they might follow me on Instagram as well because I posted about. I think there's one of those things where if there's any hashtag with any fire that's part of them, they just follow that account.
Well, I mean, they took the website down almost immediately, so I mean, it looks like it's gone.
Okay.
Listen. Okay, let's go ahead and call an end to this. We can talk about the damn ONE Championship anytime we want offline. But Andrew, you're on MMA Sucker, correct?
That's correct, yes.
You recently done a review about Rizin 30 on MMA Sucker, correct?
Preview. I'm currently going for the recap right now. I'm currently going for the recap. I like to wait when Rizin releases the videos just because videos are just better to post on articles rather than just, hey, here's a picture of somebody getting their face punched. It's just...
I agree 100%.
Understood. And if they can go to check out your happenings, especially when it comes to a certain wrestling event at one of the largest tennis stadiums in the world last night, they can check them out at abenja1 or at We Are Rising Pod on Twitter, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, just wanting to ask. And also, like I said before, you can check out this podcast on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts, with the exception of Google Podcasts, because, of course, that's where my podcast, Focus Fights Audio, and Charles's podcast, Let's Talk MMA with Shu Hirata, is available on. Other than that, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel that you're watching this from right now, We Are Rising Podcast. And, of course, you can follow me on Twitter for, some opinions, a lot of quote tweets and some things that are not suitable for work, I guess, on my personal Twitter handle at ChrisGary92. But from all of us to all of you, we hope y'all enjoyed this very special edition of the We Are Rising podcast. We hope to talk about the Rizin Landmark card in mid-October if there is a U.S. broadcaster to put over that show. If not, we will talk to y'all before Rizin 31, which is in mid-October, which, when's the date again for that show?
Oh God, it was just announced. Charles, do you happen to know offhand?
I'm sorry, when the next Rising card is announced?
When Rizin 31 is announced. Rizin 30
Ooh.
is Rizin
I think
Landmark on October 2nd.
Oh, look at that.
I think it's October, near the end of October, isn't it?
I was about to say, I thought, was it Halloween or close up? No, it's
October 24th.
Okay.
Let's just say it'll be 2 weeks before or 1 week before Halloween. If you want to check out more about the Rizin Fighting Federation, you can check out their Facebook and Instagram pages. They are at Rizin Fighting Federation. Well, actually, no. Their Facebook page is facebook.com/Rizin Fighting Federation. Their Instagram handle is the same as their Twitter handle for their domestic coverage, Rizin_PR. Rizin_English has the English language fans hooked up, and you can subscribe to their YouTube channel as well as go to their website, RizinFF.com. But from all of us to all of you, we thank you for checking out another edition of the We Are Rizin podcast. Stay safe. Don't read anything from strangers. Take care of yourselves and each other. And Lenny, I'm always screwing this last part up. But yeah, until the next time we hear from y'all, as Lenny Hart always likes to say, hold on 1 second. And with that,